Wait, hold on. Go take a look. Whew. Just take a look. Hey, folks, how's it going? We get the picture cleared up a little bit here, folks. I look like I'm getting run through 1,000 filters or something. Somebody was asking me if we were going to use the old theme song again. I was like, I guess we can on the Friday show. How did everybody like that Friday show, the podcast episode, the Not Deer? I hope everybody enjoyed it. Mr. T, thank you for that donation. Definitely appreciated. Not expected, but appreciated. All right. So, everybody, welcome to Tuesday's live stream, Paranormal Round Table. We're going to be talking about a few things here tonight. Let's get started with the Patreon. Let me read that off to everybody before we get started. Everybody needs to know who helps keep the lights on, as they say. Adam Jinx, $20. Let's see, tier. It's Adam Jinx, Brady Matsunaga, David Vigil, Dorothy Metcalf, Fat Squatch, Jim Kovach, Joyce Burnett, Martin Hertel, Maynard W, Melissa, Michael Turner, Spencer Rowley, Stephen Rivas, Titan, Vicky Walker, and the $10 tier is Alexander Murphy, Barbara Blindy, Cassidy Lee, Charles Hamill, Chris Clough, Curtis Turner, Cirilli, David Allman, Dead Man Walking, Debbie Wolf, Derek Tribble, Dick Richards, Eric Garcia, Guy, James Estrada, Josh and Callie Herrera, Kenny Irish, Christy, Martin Hertel, Mary Plyler, Matthew Durgo, Melissa Koyman, Miguel Guerra, Mimi Pecolelli, Polly G, Pauline Rome, Philip Morn, Ricardo Herrera, Samantha Bowman, Shonda Hardinger, Sonia Girding, Stephen Hall, Super Hornet 1, Taylor Alexander Oric, and Terry Fusler. You are the people that keep the show going. Thank you so much for your donations. And everyone that donates to the show, just in general, you keep it going. Thank you. So we are going to have a special guest coming on tonight. But not just yet. We got to get some things out of the way here. If you're not a part of the Paranormal Roundtable group on Facebook, I suggest you go join. It's free. Just go to Facebook and join Paranormal Roundtable group. And then we have the Paranormal Encounters, which is Tony's group. And then we have Paranormal Lounge, which is Nellie's, also the Paranormal Prayer group, which is also Nellie. The North American Dogman Project, Region 2, which is D.A. Roberts' group. And then we have the Quad Coalition of Sciences, which is Nick Valente's group. Then we have Paranormal Trucker Podcast, which is John King. And Dogman Werewolf Discussion, which is now 4,000. Pretty good. They've grown extremely fast. And Steve Stockton just posted the link to the conference on there. So that is Phil Stern and Della Carter's group. So everybody go hit up those groups. Those are the main groups I'm in, and I'm in a bunch of others. A bunch of other groups. Dogman, Believable Evidence, Encounters, Bigfoot Believers, Dogman Believers Only, Full Spectrum Universe, Anomalous Universe, World's Largest Ghost Hunt, Cryptids, Legends, Lore, and Crazy Stories, Cryptozoology and You, Paranormal World, Bigfoot and All Things Crypto, North American Dogman Project Region 3, African Cryptids, Cryptid Creatures, UFO Roundtable, Cryptozoology, Sasquatch Believers Only, Ancient History and Myths, Ghost, Paranormal, Supernatural Myths and Legends, Bigfoot Odyssey, Appalachian Cryptids and Folklore, Dead Man Talking's Cabin in the Woods, Mandela Effect and Other Strange Things, Dogman Werewolf Sightings, Paranormal Soup, Midwest Paranormal. Shout out to Jason Bland. That's his show. He's great. One of the most underrated podcasters out there. Now, as you know, Tony Merkel's a somebody says here. Let me see. Send a donation. Itachi Uchina, $1.99. Thank you for that donation. Here's the thing. There are several people that I deal with that I'm really good friends with, and those people have shows. Lance Trick was one of them. Steve Stockton's one of them. Josh Pinocchio is another, and Tony Merkel. They all have really good podcasts. Tony Merkel's is The Confessionals. Josh Pinocchio is What Lurks Beneath. And Steve Stockton has, oh my gosh, I think he has 2 different ones. He's also written 11 books, and I got to make sure that I don't mess his up. I've seen it and I've watched it and I can't remember the freaking name of it, which is embarrassing. But let me make sure that I don't say it wrong. Missing Persons Mysteries. That's one of his. He's got almost 200,000 subscribers. Fat Squatch 94. Thank you for that donation. We're going to talk about a few things real quick. We're going to try and get it out of the way. But anyway, those are all really good podcasts, really good shows. I don't want to leave anybody out that I'm friends with. Dark Waters is another one that I'm friends with, and he's got a really good show. And I spent this past week talking to him off and on the phone, and we ironed some things out, and he's been really busy, and I've been really busy, and we reconnected, and we had a really good week talking. He reached out to me, and unfortunately, he's not able to go to the conference. Another person I deal with, who I just got off the phone with, is Bettina Moss. Now, just so you know, there is no beef or drama between me and Bettina, okay? She had made an announcement in her group, and apparently some people got all excited on both sides, good and bad. Like, I don't know what these people, like, why y'all are so thirsty to see conflict or whatever, but there is no conflict there. I had announced that there was going to be a lineup change. The lineup change for the conference, which is August 12th and 13th. If you're a VIP member, it's on the 12th, and it goes August 12th and 13th. The 13th is the main conference where everybody speaks. The 12th, you get to have a dinner with us, pick our brains, hang out with us, and just chill. So that's part of the VIP package, plus you get front row seating. But, I mean, there's not going to be any place in that conference where you're going to be in the back and not be able to see. Tickets are selling at a steady clip. We predict they'll probably be out, probably pretty soon. I mean, you still have time right now to get tickets. But, I mean, I wouldn't wait around too long to make a decision whether you want to go or not. And I know everybody's always got a million excuses and reasons why they can't or won't go do certain things. But let me tell you something, the procrastination, it could cost you, because we don't know that this will ever be duplicated. To have this kind of lineup has never been done, okay? And I wanted to make a conference that people could walk away from, to where if it never happens again, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and you were there, and you got to be a part of it. And I have put a lot of work and effort into this. So has Ken Gerhardt. That guy has taken a lot of his time and energy for not a lot of reward to do this, okay? Because it was something that we had talked about when the pandemic hit, and so we had to put it on the back burner for a couple of years. Then David Weatherly had brought it back up and said, hey, you should try to re-pursue that. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what I did. When I mentioned it to Ken, he was on it like, boom, like white on rice. He was just like, okay, we're going to do this. I've already talked to this person, that person. I was like, wow. So I owe him a debt of gratitude for that. I want to say something about the Bettina thing. Look, okay. there was a misunderstanding. I'm not mad at her. She's not mad at me. Okay. She thought that she was being dumped off of the lineup, that I was like, okay, I'm done, whatever. There was something that was said in that group, in her group. Okay. And her group is her group. It has nothing to do with me. And I made a comment that somebody, surprise, surprise, had something smart mouth to say. And then I said something back, and then, you know, it shouldn't have gone any further than that. But I guess because of who I am, they thought, oh, you think you're somebody because you're so-and-so. And I'm like, I didn't know this person knew who the heck I was. I just thought that, you know, and Bettina works during the day. She has a job like I do, like a lot of us do. So we don't all have time in these groups to sit there and micromanage and whatever. And you depend on your moderators and your admins to kind of take care of stuff. And so things kind of got sideways, and I just backed off. And then later on in the day, I announced that there was going to be a lineup change, which had nothing to do with Bettina. And I think she thought that I was mad about that little tiff or whatever, which was just a small thing. I thought somebody was kind of being bullied. That's what I thought. Okay. And I said something, and I brought it to her attention, and she dealt with it, you know, but I think she thought that I was mad at her or something, and so that I was making a change just because of that. You know, in her defense, she's been messed with a lot. People have done and said a lot of really mean things, nasty things, and they've done it to me and said a lot of mean and nasty things. People trying to keep you down, and people that are below you trying to push you out of the way. So you get messed with. And so honestly, I think that she thought that, you know, that's what was happening. And so when I said that, I think she took it as, oh, well, I guess we're done. We're not, you know, and she admitted that she jumped the gun on that. And I was like, what are you talking about? We have no beef. There's no problem here. Okay. It wasn't even about her. You know, I just said that there were certain people, you know, that needed to be kind of looked at or whatever. But let me tell you something, that's in all groups. That's not just her group. That's every group. Our group has the same issues, the same problems. We were on the phone with Nick Valente today. Us three were talking today. And we were talking about these groups and how, you know, Nick's got his different groups, and he's got to, you know, regulate them, and he's got to put people in there that regulate them. And sometimes I had a person in my group that was in charge of regulating things, and he began to be, play favorites and argue with people and fuss. And it's a very close person to me. And I had to tell them, sorry, man, we can stay friends, but I can't really use you because you're taking it personal. Okay. And so me, I don't care. I let things roll off the, you know, whatever. Forgive. Don't always forget, just in case. But, you know, but with Bettina, it ain't like that. Okay. The lineup change is this. And this is what the announcement was about. I talked to Kumbo, and he's maybe not going to be able to do the conference. He's not 100% sure. Okay. And so that sucks. I'm not real sure he's gonna be able to do it. And I can't get a hold of Vault. So Vault, if you're out there and you're listening, I don't know what happened to you, but you went out of contact with me. Your phone is, when I call it, it's just basically disconnected. So if you guys are out there listening, get in touch with me so I can figure out what's going on, and I can explain to you the travel arrangements and the hotel and all that. And if you are going to the conference and you use the Quality Inn there, they are giving us a discount if you tell them that you are going to be there for the conference. August 12th and 13th in Tennessee, Paris, Tennessee. Eventbrite. Anthony, if you could be so kind, put the link in the comment section to the conference. We still have general admission tickets, and, you know, which is, you still get to get all the, you know, whatever. You know, there's going to be a lot of cool people there that you can meet that you may not otherwise be able to. I did talk to Dark Waters about maybe filling in that slot and doing it, and he was supposed to get back with me today, which he did. And unfortunately, his son's starting college, and he would have to go the Monday after that. He would have to go like directly from there to go, and so it just wouldn't work out. So he's not going to be able to attend. That's unfortunate. I wanted him to go, and so that's not going to work. But he's still going to be a friend of mine and an ally, somebody who I've talked a lot with over the last few years. So anyway, that being said, that was the confusion Bettina is not off the roster. I don't know, and there's people who were happy about that. Like, oh, y'all are fighting, yay. No, stop getting excited and stop getting hopeful. That's not the case, and our friendship has not crumbled, and it was just a misunderstanding on her part and mine. And so, just so everybody knows, there is no conflict. Everything's fine. All right. It was just, I think with the post, I should have been a little more specific, but I wanted to let everybody know so you guys could tune in and I could let you know about the lineup change. So Kumbo Baker more than likely won't be able to make it. And we're still not 100% sure about a couple other people, but for the most part, for the 100%, there's going to be at least a dozen solid speakers there that are well known. So I guess Vol posted he needed a break. Okay, well, everybody does. I was feeling that way earlier today. I was actually thinking about not doing the show tonight, which would be ridiculous because I can't leave you hanging, But I am tired and I am a little wore down because every time even a hint of conflict pops up, a bunch of people want to jump in and put their 2 cents in, start talking, and it's like I just get so tired of it. When Bettina made a post on her group saying that we weren't working together or whatever, there was some really nasty comments that were thrown at me. It's pretty wrong. Not from her part. She didn't know. Yeah, she said, "Hey, made a mistake. I did too. I should have been more clear." Because people do and say things all the time, because when you're dealing with the people in this field, there's a lot of people who are quick to make judgments and throw you under the bus and just whatever, man. And so it was just people blowing it up. And I think Angela Jeffries, if you're listening, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You were like, maybe it's these trolls and pretty much, yeah, it was outside people who took that and ran with it and turned it into something it wasn't. And so, yeah, I just got off the phone with her earlier and we're fine. I mean, I just did work with her and I like Bettina. I got no issues with her. Aloe vera. Good for you. But you know what's not good for you? Gossiping and talking trash. Some people just can't get enough of it. Get my glasses on so I can make sure I can read everything correctly instead of just guessing. Hold on 1 second, folks. Namiria asked Josh, when is the Shark Show with Kevin going to be on? That's this Friday. It's this coming Friday. And I want to ask for prayers for Linda Godfrey, please. I'm not going to say more than this, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to go up there to Wisconsin. Linda needs prayers, please, everybody. So, if you don't mind. Somebody said, didn't know the cryptid community had so much drama. Haha, dang. It's always like that. I mean, it's just the way it is, dude. I mean, it's like that in every field you go into, though, dude. I mean, I do security, and it's just like, these people are so nasty and mean, and if they can snake a contract from you, they'll do it, and they'll do anything. So that's all motivated by money. A lot of this is motivated by greed, but also notoriety. That people just want that. Let me make this text really quickly, folks. So my email address is, let me make sure I got it. My email address is prtpodcast, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. If you want to send me a story and you're not on Facebook, Messenger, or whatever, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. Josh Turner, PRTpodcast.com. And PRTpodcast.com is obviously my show, the website. Okay, all right. So it looks like it's okay. Let me just set this up real quick, folks. If you could, hit the like button and subscribe. I got an announcement to make. We hit 18,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're now at 7.7 thousand in our group. So we're pushing for 8,000 over there. We hit 18,000. Yeah, Ken Gerhardt just said famous Bigfoot researchers have pointed shotguns at each other. Yeah. There have been some very famous feuds within the Bigfoot community, within the ghost community. The UFO community is rife with, and I'm sort of a part of all those communities. And so I have to deal with all those communities to get stories. I'll tell you something funny in a minute. Hold on. But anyway, if you go to any of our group, if you go to any of my profiles on Facebook, which I have two regular profiles, a regular one and kind of a backup one, let me know that you are a listener of the show so that I can approve you. Otherwise, probably not going to approve you. And I hate having to sit there and type out, are you a listener of the show? And a lot of people, and then they say, hey, yeah, I am. There are a lot of friend requests sitting in my box that are going to be just unanswered because I don't know you in my personal life and you're not telling me who you are. Shonda, thank you for that amazing donation. That's awesome. You're so sweet. Thank you for always helping us out. Because right now, with the conference and everything, we could use it. The link is up there. Eventbrite. That's where you go to get your tickets for the conference. And like I said, you're going to get a huge, heavy hitter lineup of people. One of the things I was going to talk about is, before I get my guests on tonight, he's going to come on in about half an hour, and we're going to talk some Dogman and some other crazy stuff. I went to the outlet mall in San Marcos, and this is crazy. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories here. I didn't expect, I always have my business cards when I go out, but I didn't expect so much stuff to happen in one day. Like I went on like Wednesday, I think, to the outlet mall. And we went kind of late, and me and my wife she had to go pick up a couple pair of pants, because we thought we were going to be going on this trip. And I guess now that's not really going to happen, and it's very sad. But she said, you get a couple pairs of clothes for changes of clothes, whatever. So we went to the stores out there at the outlet mall in San Marcos. I think it's one of the largest outlets in the entire country. I mean, they have every store that has any kind of brand at all. They have everything you can imagine. I mean, there's 100 stores out there. It's crazy. So anyway, it's a very large place, and actually two outlets right there together. There's the Tanger, and then there's the Premium, and they're right there together. And so we were at the Premium side, and I went into the Invictus store to get one of my watches worked on. And there's a guy there named Caesar, who's a really good guy. I got to know him, and his supervisor was there for a little bit. And we started talking, and, I'm friendly and try to be nice, and this guy was very friendly. Shout out to him. And I also needed to get a graduation present, of watch. I wanted to get a watch for each of my two cousins who were graduating from high school, and then I got one for Anthony. So we started talking, and unfortunately, they're like smaller, and most Invictas are big, so I really find what I was looking for there. But I did make a couple purchases, and so I had to go run and pick up my wife at the other store that was across the road. And I said, I'll be back, because he had a couple things to do, because a couple of my watches needed links and stuff taken out. So So I go to the other side, and and she's still not ready. So I went back over there, and somebody just said here, Borio, what is this, Borio, what is this? What are you talking about? Because if you're bored, you can leave. Anyways, long story short, we're sitting there talking, and he says, this place is haunted. And I had given him my card, and he said, this is haunted. And I said, okay, how so? And he says, well, sometimes, you know, we'll hear voices, we'll see things, you know, and you know, stuff will happen, and I'll hear noises in the back or whatever. We're sitting there talking, another few minutes go by, and I'm facing him, and somebody comes in to the store, and you could literally hear this person moving around, and we could hear like people were talking. And then I turn around and I look, and there's no one there. And you can see outside where it's at, because it's the last store in the very back corner of that outlet mall. There was nobody there. And I literally, both of us, we looked at each other, and he goes, you see what I'm talking about? Just a couple minutes, man, literally after he said that. And so I was like, that is really weird. And I felt the pressure of the door open. I heard the voices, and I turned around, and there was no one there. And it really, really, really freaked me out. And so I thought, this is crazy. Like, I just started talking about this, and it started happening. Well, it gets weirder. Like, we're sitting there talking, and a few more minutes go by, and we're actually at this point, we're talking about boxing or whatever. And then we hear like somebody clapped or something from the back room, which was there, you know, where they keep the utility closet, whatever, all that stuff. And I was like, what was that? And so he put the watch down, and we walked around to the back, and it's just like a small break room with like a utility, you know, and then the supplies and stuff. There's nobody there. There was no one there. I mean, you could clearly hear, like somebody there. Like, it sounded like someone clapped their hands, and it was just so weird, man. And you're going like, what in the heck is going on? You know, like, we're sitting there talking about it, and then it happened. And so that was really weird. Well, anyways, he tells me that one day he was standing there, and he showed me the shelf where they kept the supplies. They had like these Clorox wipes and all this stuff. And he said, I'm standing there underneath it. And he goes, everything is just like it is, you know, put up on the shelf, pushed back, you know. And he said one of them slid down and fell and hit him on the head. Like, just out of nowhere. And then one day the door like shook, you know, like somebody was trying to get in after it was closed. And I thought, dude, it was so weird. Well, the last time I had gone there with Tony and Anthony and my wife, we were all in there, and I thought that I had heard something like that before. I thought I thought I saw two people walk into the store. When I turned around and I looked, there was nobody there. So I had mentioned that to him. I said, this has happened before in this store. So the Invicta, I'm telling you, over there at the outlet mall, it's haunted. I mean, it definitely. So fast forward the next day, we ended up having to go back because Anthony's graduation was Friday. That's when he walked, right? So he wanted to have a nice pair of shoes and some slacks or whatever to wear. He wears the gown over, but then afterwards you take it off and you take pictures before, after, blah, 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 blah. So we needed to get him some clothes. So we said, okay, we'll take you over to the outlet mall on, you know, so that was Thursday because we had gone the day before. And I needed to return something in props and shout out to the guys over at Pinball Kingdom. Pinball's Kingdom is one of the three pinballs, really cool place. Can't say enough about it. It's the funnest time you'll ever have. It's like Dave & Buster's and Main Event, but a lot better. Way better. And so, anyways, Pinball's Kingdom is in Buda, and it's on the way. So, we had gone there, and me and my wife actually won 33,000 tickets, which is a lot. I mean, that was really cool. We had to stack this high on this coin called Angry Birds. Anyways, long story short, we ended up getting one of these little portable Super Nintendos where you can play all the games. So we go home, we started trying to play it Wednesday night. Lo and behold, player 2 controller doesn't work. So when we went back through there, we stopped at Pinball Kingdom and we got it replaced. And the managers are, shout out to CJ, and I got some stories for you too from them. CJ and Duncan, the managers, and then Andy, one of the employees, very cool guys. All of them very, very nice. And we met a couple of the cooks, Justin. They all were, after hours, we were sitting around talking for half an hour afterwards, and they were just telling us crazy stories, which I'll get to in a minute. So that place is haunted too, and I'll tell you a little bit of history about that place. So anyways, we had to go back. So we said, you know what, we got to go back anyway. We got to return that, and we'll do it on the way back because they don't close till midnight. So we went to the outlet mall the second day, which was Thursday. Well, we dropped off Anthony at the store that he was going to be shopping at to get his shirts. Okay. This is crazy what ended up happening. So anyway, I go to the casual mail where I can get larger shirts like this. And I meet two kids. One of them's name is Trina. The other one's name is Justin. And turns out Trina actually knew and went to school with Anthony's younger brother. Small world. And they're going to school at Texas State. Well, while we were in there, when I was walking to the back, I looked down and I thought I saw somebody walk by me going into the dressing room, and I turned and I looked and there was nobody there. And so I was kind of joking with my wife, and I said, maybe this place is haunted too, and she's like, I don't know. I haven't felt or seen anything. She kind of like, I'll take your word for it, Then after I finished trying on the clothes and buying some shirts and whatever, we took them up to the counter. And we started talking, and before I was about to leave, I gave them a business card. And then Justin tells me, he's like, oh my gosh, you talk about the paranormal. I said, yeah, I do a lot of research in this area near Devil's Backbone. And he was like, oh man, okay. And I said, Purgatory Road. He immediately knew about the Goat Man, because people in that area, a lot of them do. So we started talking about that. And then that's when we found out Trina actually was from my hometown, and she knew a bunch of stories and stuff and legends. So I thought it was pretty cool when Trina said that she knew my nephew, and then they both said simultaneously, this place is haunted. And I was like, wow. Okay. I said, because the Invicta store yesterday had some weird stuff happen. Well, she said that sometimes they would see this like shadowy figure walking between the clothes racks, which probably a year ago I was in there. And there was a German lady that was working there in front, like she was from Germany. And I had given her a card, and she had told me that there was sometimes in the evening she was there by herself. She would get freaked out because she would see things or hear things, whatever. So I thought that's crazy. Like, that whole area, obviously, it all used to be inhabited by the Comanches. Now, they used to live and camp around that area because it's close to the river. It's actually in between two rivers. And so I thought there's got to be something to this. But anyway, Justin had a UFO encounter. What's even weirder is we're on our way back the next night or whatever, and we stopped and we exchanged the machine that didn't work for one that did. And Andy, one of the kids that worked at Pinball Kingdom, he tells me, I've had a UFO encounter. When they describe these UFOs, dude, they're almost the same thing. Okay. Not only is it the same thing, but it was the same thing like what I saw when I was with my wife that would be just west of there. Most of the UFO encounters I get, though, now, counting them two, I did the math, it's 8. I thought it was 7, but then with Justin and Andy, that's 8. So we got 8 encounters of UFOs in the last 6 months that happened just east of the I-35 corridor going between Austin and San Marcos, or actually going to New Braunfels. So it gets weirder. We went to go eat German food in a place called Alpine Haus, which is also haunted, and it's in New Braunfels, right? Now, I have had myself personally at least 3 experiences in this place. I'll tell you about it. So I go in there to eat at the Alpine Haus, and I know the owner. We got to talking, and we've even kicked the idea around about maybe doing an investigation there because there's so much activity that happens. The waitresses, the cooks, everybody I've talked to, they say it's haunted. I was in the bathroom one time, and I was just about to open the door, and somebody knocked on the door 3 times, like, and I said, oh, and I opened the door, and there was nobody there, and there's a long hallway. There's nobody there. Nobody. And I thought, okay, that's weird. That was the first time I had something weird happen to me. The other time was when I was walking by the table closest to the door that goes to the hallway for the bathroom. This is the Alpine Haus, right? I looked down and I saw a man sitting there eating dinner. And then when I looked again, it was a woman. And so then I was like, oh, okay. And then I was walking, and my wife was walking by me to go to the restroom. So I turned around to talk to her, briefly. And I looked at that table again. There was nobody there. Nobody there. And I thought, okay. So at that time, this was about a year ago, I talked to the waitress. I'd been there a couple times. That's the first time I'd had an encounter. That was last summer. And I said, hey, is this place haunted? And she says, yeah, it is. And they started telling me all this stuff. Well, I went back there last winter. Once again, had a weird experience in there. was walking to the bathroom, and I felt the door open to the bathroom, like somebody was messing with it. And I'm like, I'm in here and I'm trying to, take care of my business, whatever. And I'm standing there like getting aggravated. I'm like, hey, I'm in this bathroom. The door shakes again. And so I just went and opened the door, because I was done or whatever. I hadn't even gotten to wash my hands yet or whatever. And I'm like, I'm done. And there's nobody there. Okay. Then the owner and the manager and the waitresses tell me all these crazy stories about all these people who've had encounters in this place. And so I thought, man, where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, get this. Anthony, being the bright child that he is and graduating with an architectural degree, he decides to throw his 3 shirts in the dryer, and he shrinks them all to the size of Barbie clothes. No kidding. I mean, he shrunk the crap out of them. So then my wife says, oh, it's okay. We'll go back on Monday and we'll exchange them, which I didn't think they would be able to do because he dried them, whatever. But Express is cool. They were like, yeah, they exchanged them. So what ended up happening, we went back on Monday, and this time we took Tony with us. Now, I did eventually end up buying the watches. I went into the watch station, and when I bought some Armani exchange watches for my 2 nephews, and then one for Anthony for their graduation. And shout out to Skylar and I'm trying to remember the other guy's name, but they were really Paxton, Skylar and Paxton. Skylar, really, really cool looking dude, really nice dude, kind of looks like Tyler Perry, a really good guy, and he helped me out, and I appreciate you helping you guys. I'm going to give you a shout out on the show for that. You guys are good kids, all y'all. Very, very nice, everybody that worked there. And so anyway, we go back yesterday to exchange the shirts, and we decide to go eat German food again. Okay, here's what's crazy. All right, the hotel from across there is a historical landmark, and it's notoriously haunted, whatever, and everybody's always talking about it. Well, what happened to us wasn't a ghost encounter. We think we saw a UFO, which was weird because we had just been given 2 UFO encounters, along that corridor in the last, 3 or 4 days. And my wife is in the aeronautical industry, and she looks up and she sees it, and there's one of the cooks outside, and her and the cook and Anthony are looking, and we all look up, and we see this ball of light kind of moving weird, and then it just starts to go up, like it's going up into the atmosphere and starting to fade away. Planes have certain lights on them that you can tell that they are planes. They have these red flashing lights, whatever. This was just a ball of light. And so anyway, it just shot up into the atmosphere and it was gone. And we were just in disbelief. We were like, wow. Now you tell me, folks, what are the odds of all that happening in that span of time? That is so freaking weird. And now you're talking about a place that's just right there next to the Devil's Backbone. If you take the road from New Braunfels and you can go down Riverfront Road. And there have been a ton of Dogman sightings out there, mostly to the west and to the east, like I said, are the Bigfoot, tend to be the Bigfoot. And it's so freaking crazy, man. Like the week I had just full of like weird paranormal stuff. I also went to eat at a restaurant on Saturday called Realities. I had never been there before. It's been there for 27 years, and everybody's always told me it was great, and I've just never gotten around to it. And in the last couple of years, because of my low sodium diet, I have to pick places that can make food that's low sodium. And so one of those places, when I go to Alpine Haus, they always make mine low sodium. They make it from scratch right there. And so Realities was no exception. They actually did the same thing for me, and shout out to them, the management. They're really cool guys. Donald, our waitress, was great. Our waiter was a great guy, and they told me that it was haunted. And I felt a really good energy when you walk in to the right. On the right side, you feel this warm, nice, welcoming energy. When you go toward the bar, it feels a little weird. And when I was talking to the manager, he told me that the reason is because the former owner, which there's a picture of on the wall, she did not like the serving of alcohol. She was against it. Now, I'm supposing that her husband or whatever was the one that was okay with that. And then, but she passed away in 2016. But as you walk toward that bar, you feel like it's weird. You feel like this weird energy. And they claim that glasses have moved off the shelves and wine bottles have fallen off and stuff. And I wouldn't doubt it because I could totally feel it. I didn't fear it. I felt it. But the same thing happened at Pinballs when we were there in Buda. Justin, the cook, told me that a ladle flew off and almost hit him, you know. And so when I was walking to the back, there was closed, right? And I went to the back to use the bathroom. I walked through a really, really warm spot, and then I walked into a cold spot, which was, you know, that's indicative of spiritual activity. So, you know, it's been a very weird week. A lot of, you know, and as everybody knows, I lost my mother last May. Yesterday was the anniversary of her passing, and I had a dream about her yesterday. Not today, thank goodness. I didn't, you know, I sleep during the day typically. I didn't have anything today, but yesterday I was really having a rough time. And so I thank my nephews and my godson for going with me, and my wife especially for keeping my mind occupied and going out and doing stuff with me to keep me from thinking and dwelling on her passing. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw all those little stories out there, and we got a ton of different stories from people who gave us their stories and things that happened to them. So it's very interesting. Yeah, Stephen says, why low salt blood pressure? Yes, blood pressure. And I am salt sensitive, so that is one of the things that triggers my blood pressure, that and anxiety. Those are really the main factors. I don't really have a lot of other things. Like if I'm on top of my anxiety and my salt intake, it stays low. Sometimes it gets really low. And I've also always had a low resting pulse. I'm talking like in the 40s. It's always been low. I mean, like when I was young, the doctors would always be like, man, I can barely feel your pulse. You know, it's like 48, 50, you know. That's just how I roll. It's always been low. But I was always in pretty good shape, you know, which even when I was, you know, just really fat and obese and had really a lot of problems. I mean, I think that just having been in shape and healthy for a long time, I think it helped me. God allowed me to stay alive because my body was used to physical exertion and exercise, and my heart was strong. But anyway, I thought I would give you those stories. There'll be more to come because there's a lot of people who, you know, just a bunch of people gave me stories about all kinds of weird stuff from that whole corridor there. Why it's so haunted, I don't know. I had a friend of mine whose mother lived in between San Marcos and Kyle, which is like, it's like Austin, Buda, Kyle, San Marcos, then New Braunfels, then Schertz, then San Antonio. That's that whole corridor right there. It's almost like one long city now. But yeah, stimulate, yeah, keep kidneys in check. You're right. And so one of the things that I learned from him, his mother owned land out there, was that they saw a lot of UFOs out there. And some of the UFO activity that people have experienced out there is really scary. Like, I'm not talking just, I saw something like we did the other day at the Alpine House where we saw that UFO, which would be the fourth one now that I've seen in my life. I'm talking like these things hovering low, making no sound, and going over their vehicle and literally scanning them, and even them having loss of time. You know, and I did talk to a UFO researcher recently, and when I started to talk to him about some of the encounters that I had gotten back in, I think there was a spattering of them here in Texas. I went back to, they were near, oh God, I'm trying to remember the name of the city. There was like 3 or 4 of them. Anyways, I can tell you right now, it's a Buckholtz area, but it was, you know, and another a sighting that came out of Gerald. And you can look on a map and you can see, and it's one of the things that I learned about those encounters though was that they were missing time. Like they were not able to account for blocks of time. And then one of them, her son, who's like 17, 18, I think he's 18 now, but when he was 17 last year, they were on the way to Round Rock, which is right outside of Austin. you know, and she said that they woke up the next day and they felt weird and they don't remember going home. The last thing I remember is this light going over the top of their vehicle. It's indicative of an abduction. And I'm not saying that that's what happened because they don't remember it. But common sense, if you know anything about this kind of stuff. So I was talking to this researcher who, I'm not going to mention his name because he's not worth mentioning, but he was just like, oh, well, you know, really and truly, you know, you're a Dogman, Bigfoot researcher. You should kind of stay in your lane. That's kind of what he told me. He didn't say those exact words, but that's what he was getting at. He was kind of basically saying that I needed to just stick to what I'm good at. And I said, well, what I'm good at is getting stories of the strange and the bizarre and retelling them or getting someone to come on and tell them. And I invited him to talk on my show, and he says, I don't do paranormal because my show's called Paranormal Round Table. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I said, and actually I said, I normally don't waste my time talking to douchebags. I hung up. But anyway, that seems to be the lay of the land and where we're at right now with UFO people not liking Bigfoot people and Bigfoot people not liking Dogman people not liking ghost people not liking UFO people, and it just goes on and on and on. And you're just like, rah, rah, rah. You know, it just, there's no happy medium there. You know what I mean? I'm trying to bring people together. Like Nick Valente with his, you know, group, the Coalition of Quad Sciences. I mean, this is all related, dude. These are all mysteries. Whether or not you're a Bigfoot flesh and blood person or you're a Dogman, you believe it's a spiritual thing, whatever. We're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out what's going on. And none of us have 100% grasp on what is going on. Can I tell you what was happening over there at the Outlet Mall? I have no idea. I know this. When I went in there to use the restroom yesterday, I went into the restroom right next to the Invicta, and I didn't go into the Invicta. It was already closed. All that is there is a restroom, and then there's an open field in the back behind there, and that's it. There's nothing else. And if you open the door and look, you'll see anybody that's right there. So when I was drying my hands, I heard the door open, and I saw a shadow. Okay, you could see the shadow on the wall, and I thought, well, that's odd. This person's just going to open the door and stand there in the doorway. So all I did was just dug my head around there like this because that's all you had to do, because I was drying my hands on the dryer, and I just went like that. There's nobody standing there. And I look over, and the shadow's gone. So immediately I darted out, and I opened the door, and I looked, and if there was anybody around, you would have saw them, because all you got to do is walk up, look to the left, look straight. There's nobody there. Went around the back, nobody there, either way. Unless this person managed to fly up into the air and go into the roof. So who was there? What was there? Why it was there? I have no idea. But I know that there was a shadow that appeared on the wall, and like somebody had walked in and there was nobody there. So I had a very strange... Big Cole says, congratulations, Anthony, and a $20 donation. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean... all that happened in the 3 trips we've taken in the last week over to the Alamo. Also, there's a place called Pepper Palace there. It's really good. They have really, really, really hot stuff. They have like scorpion peppers, Reaper pepper, Carolina Reaper peppers. They have the, what is the other one that's really popular? Ghost pepper and jalapeno, habanero, everything in between, chili pekin. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like they have a bunch. And so we went in there, and a kid named Renan, really good guy. He helped us, and we talked about our show, whatever, and we asked him if his store was haunted, and he said not that he knew of. So, and people at Psycho Bunny said that they didn't think theirs was haunted either. So, not every store there is, but there are some really weird haunted things going on at that place, and then just in that area in general. If you were a ghost hunter, a UFO hunter, a Bigfoot hunter, or a Dogman researcher, whatever, you would love that area because there's stuff all over the place. Here's the question I'm going to ask my audience, and I'm going to ask you this in all honesty. Why do you think that area has so much activity? Why are people seeing UFOs? Why are people seeing ghosts? Why are people seeing Dogman, Bigfoot, and chupacabras? I had a woman tell me she saw a chupacabra out there. I mean, why is that? Why would it be in that corridor right there? east and west of the of I-35. Why would it be there? And all at one time. Do you realize that that's just really unlikely? But these people, you know, they told us, you know, me and my nephews, my godson, my wife, they told us that they see these things, that this is stuff that really happens. These people saw these things. I really think that there is a lot going on here that we don't understand. And I think we're making a huge mistake by everybody. Ley lines, there you go. Somebody's throwing it out there. Somebody said portal, ley lines. The Native Americans will open portals to dimensions. It was probably a coyote with mange. I don't know what that is. You're talking about the chupacabra now. It wasn't one of those the dog-looking ones, dude. I don't count those. I don't call those chupacabra. And she didn't tell me she saw a chupacabra. This lady was Caucasian. She didn't, because a lot of Mexicanos, they say, you know, chupacabra is like a catch-all, you know. But this was not. This was a Caucasian lady that saw this thing. It didn't look like that at all. And it was right after a UFO encounter that her stepson's best friend had, which, you know, subsequently stayed the night at their house. And then they saw this weird-looking thing hopping around the backyard. And that happened right outside of Buda. Look these places up on a map, and you tell me. You know, it's crazy. The underground caverns, that's another thing. I talk about that all the time. So now that we're talking about this whole mysteries and all that, let me call somebody and let's get his opinion on it. I got a friend of mine that I wanted to bring on. And we'll see if we can get him and get his opinion on all this. Let's try it again. But I want to answer a question real quick. Where is it at? There it goes. John Villafranca says, I have tried several times to donate, but it doesn't go through. It just goes blank. Sorry. I don't know, Anthony. I don't know if you can help with that. I don't know what that would be. I'm sorry to hear that, John. Lori P says, Skinwalker Ranch is a good example of clustered activity. Yes, it is. That is what I'm talking about. Why do people see all these weird things in the same place? You know, people seeing UFOs. I literally just had like UFOs and ghosts happen to me. Like, I mean, in just a span of a couple of days, it was crazy. Sir Paul says, love the podcast, been listening since day one. You already know, Josh, keep up the great work. Excited for the Tennessee conference. I'm excited too. And I hope everybody goes that can go. I was so tired today, folks. I was like, I'm just going to sleep in and not go in. I'm just like, man, I can't do that to my people. I was just so tired.
Yo, can you hear me, my man?
Yeah, there you are. Okay. So
all my stuff was blocked. I don't use Facebook, so I had to figure out what's happening with you.
Oh, not much, man. So Titan, thank you for that donation. Hopes this helps with the conference. Josh, blessings on you. Thank you, Titan, for that generous donation. Everybody, Dark Waters, you've never been on my show before. It's been a long time coming. So we were just talking about a lot of weird, anomalous things happening in one area. And kind of wanted to get your take on that.
All right, what kind of take on what? What exactly are we talking about?
Well, what we were talking about is I took a trip like 3 times in the last week to a place right outside of Austin, and in this corridor, I've gotten 8 UFO reports, counting mine and my wife's and my nephew's that we saw on 2 days ago or Monday. It would be 9 now UFO sightings in the past 6 months, and then bunches of stores at the outlet there. The employees and the workers claim that they're haunted. Now, if you go west of there, which is where the Devil's Backbone is, you get Bigfoot in the east part of that area, and then going further west, you get Dogman. Now, why would they all be in the same area?
What's the history of the land? Is it like part Native American land? Is it what's the deal with it? I don't know anything about it.
Well, the history of it is that the Lipan Apache lived there at one time, and then the Comanches drove them further south. There's been a lot of bloodshed there. A lot of crazy things have happened there in the Devil's Backbone. But that area to the east of 35, Interstate 35, shouldn't be. I don't really know much about it other than the Comanches camped along that area quite a bit.
Well, it sounds no different than like a New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? It's the history of the land, the activities of the people on the land dictate everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might have, if it's Native American land, you got to understand what those traditions were from a Christian perspective, what it means, what they practice and what it means, and then how that affects the world around you. So, for example, New Orleans, I'll talk about where I'm at. People get excited when they come to New Orleans, but they have no clue what it is, right? It's the home of voodoo and voodoo and hoodoo. But they don't understand that New Orleans is pretty much a pagan-run city, a city that participates, not pagan-run, but participates in pagan rituals every year. Probably the biggest pagan ritual on the planet, which is Mardi Gras, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go deeper, you go into the slave roots and the African religion that came over, and then it intermingled with the Native American religion when slaves were run off into the woods, and they were married into a Native American tribe. So it's all spiritual entities and different things that I guess you can say things that have dominion over areas that we're dealing with. And once you understand it from that perspective, nothing surprises you. And you know how to drill down on it and figure out what's going on. That's why I said, what's the history of the land? Once you know the history of the land, it explains a lot. So we know Native Americans have been talking about UFOs forever. They've been talking about Dogman and Bigfoot forever. So it doesn't surprise me if it's Native American land, then that's the kind of activity on it. I think people make stuff too complicated in this field. Like there's definitive answers that we found and we know, things to be true, but sometimes people complicate them. I guess because it makes it exciting when you complicate it, but it's really simple. There's good and bad. There's good and evil. There's light and there's dark. And if you mess around and go your behind to a place where there's a lot of darkness, or where there was darkness in the past, you can anticipate seeing darkness. And that's all it boils down to.
And Dark, I was going to tell you something. We've had a couple conversations as of late, and your name is Dark Waters, but I really look at you as somebody who is trying to bring the light into the darkness. So we need to change your name to Light Waters.
Nah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. That's like changing my name to some kind of light beer. Nah, we're gonna stick with the Dark Waters. So I appreciate the offer, but I'm gonna stick with where I'm at. I'm gonna stick with it. But my thing is, like I told you, Wolf, when I first came into this, the first thing I ran into in this field was Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody's been following me for a long time, the very first thing I ran into, it was right after I did Coast to Coast AM. I took Mr. X Dreams and this other creepypasta guy on. After I beef with people and I beat them up, I forget their names because it's inconsequential. But nonetheless, he was a creepypasta narrator. He went on. I used his voice to go on Coast to Coast AM. And he and I had a disagreement about me going on his channel because the agreement was, listen, I'm going to take you on Coast. You're going to give me exposure on your channel. We had a disagreement over music and copyright. And I was like, listen, I'm not giving you my voice. I'm going to put music with it. You can give me the music or a selection of music, but I'm going to do the music. He didn't want to do it. I told that man, God bless you. And he said, I cursed him. And I didn't understand it. I was like, what do you mean I cursed you, bro? I told you God bless you. And he said, you cursed me. And eventually I started researching him, and he was a hardcore Satanist. So I was cursing him. So I was like, okay, I understand what I'm dealing with now. And so from day one, I just been confronting dark things and dealing with foolishness in this field. So I understand what we're into, where we are, what it means to be in this field. And unless you acknowledge it and are truthful about it, then you just, running around lost. You got to be truthful about it. There's good and there's bad, and we deal with both.
Yeah. I know that being in New Orleans, though, you have seen and dealt with a lot of negativity. And me and you've talked about our past, and you've been through the ringer like I have. You come out on the other side, and God uses you. And I think there's a reason why we're both in this field. And one of the things I was going to say about you and just vouching for your character is that you reached out to me, and we're not going to get into a whole whatever. And
no, you could tell bro. You can tell whatever you want to tell.
And you were very, very blunt and very, yeah. And you said that you apologized. You reached out to me, and I really appreciate that. And I just was like, we should have been friends and talking and whatever, but we just kind of went our separate way. We had some issues with another person. We're not going to mention all that, but we got into it with that person, and then we just kind of were like, okay, and we shook hands and kind of went our separate way. But you made a good point about a lot of the people in this industry, just kind of like everybody's doing their own thing and not really working together to try to solve anything. Everybody's just kind of caught up in their own little world. And I'm a person like you that really wants to bring people together and wants to unify things and create a positive atmosphere in this subject that can be very dark. You know what I mean? And I know that you're a person that's been trying to do that. And I think that I look at you and especially with Bettina too, like she's a black female, and I look at her as a pioneer in this field because there are very few black men, but even fewer black females. But you, I think, kind of blazed a trail for a lot of podcasters and a lot of people. And you were one of the people that I looked at, and I watched you long before I ever jumped in and started doing this. I listened to you in your show, whatever, and I was not a big podcast listener person. I didn't. I think I listened to you and Expanded Perspectives, which consequently you've been on that show. Or I guess subsequently, whatever. You were on that show, and I remember hearing you on there, and I thought, oh man, and so it kind of made me check you out, and I started, going down the rabbit hole, and I thought, you were onto something about your thoughts and what you thought about Dogman. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of saw your views sort of evolve into what you think of it as, what it is now. It's kind of what I believe, because what I started out believing it as, having encountered one, it's not really what I think it, what I did think it was. It's not really what I think it is now. And I was going to ask you, we've talked about all that. Do you want to, kind of touch on that a little bit and what you think we're dealing with?
Yeah, we can go into that. Let me loop back to something, and we need to be real specific with our language. I like to be real specific. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping you would tell a whole story. So the reason why, so people won't get things confused, the reason why I apologized to you was because I let my heart be hardened towards you when you were going through a conflict, and I was giving you advice, and I just didn't have patience with you. And God convicted me of being a coward for fearing being rejected from you, and I should have helped you. So he said, James, you should have helped this brother. He's your brother in Christ. You should have helped him, and you should have helped walk him through everything that was going on, because you've been through it all. You knew what was coming. You saw the punches and the blows. You should have been more patient, and you should have been by your brother's side and helped him. And that's what I was convicted of. That's what I was apologizing for. Now, as far as Dogman itself and my evolution, and I really call it the de-evolution of what Dogman is. Mm-hmm. I originally started off thinking it was all flesh and blood entity just running around in the woods. But when you start to talk to witnesses, I think I capped myself at 697 or 679. It was somewhere in that range where I capped it. I just got tired of talking about it. then it clearly rolls out these classifications of encounters, like woodland encounters, urban encounters, as in like semi-rural encounters, rural encounters, deep woods, and then urban, like in the city. And what I found was the suburban slash really urban encounters were weird compared to the rest of them. Like extremely weird. I mean, the eye shine was different. There was a lot of poltergeist activity involved with the sightings. Not only that, but the people who were having the sightings were having a very hard time in their life, meaning divorces, loss of job, loss of family member. And it seemed to me like it was more of a spiritual thing. And as I'm walking through it and I'm talking to people, and then I just decided to dig real deep one time. And I talked to one gentleman. I said, "Hey, man, let me ask you a question." And it was real personal questions. I was like, "Had you been using any pornography? Had you been doing any fornication? Had you been?" And I just ran through a list of like hardcore sins, like hardcore bad, vicious stuff that we all do. I wasn't judging the man. Everybody done did something. And I said, "I just need you to be honest." I said, "Trust me, I'm not gonna ever tell anybody your name." And he started listing them. Boom, 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 boom. And I said, "Okay, this starting to make sense now," because he had something manifest in his bedroom, in a 4-story condo in Dallas, and it just didn't make any sense. No way Dogman gets there. But what did make sense was it's extremely demonic. And the problem that he had was he was consuming Dogman content, but he was doing things that opened him up to demonic spirits. That's when I made the shift back in those days where I said, "Hey, people really need to stop worshiping this. It's a false idol." At first, I was like, it's a false idol. Then I started to realize what happened behind the activity in the field. If you notice how people act crazy and they act deranged and they attack people and they're always trying to cause strife and all this other stuff. And I was like, no, 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 no. Let me look into it more. Let me start digging more. And then I realized, no, there's an entity that gets worship from this.
Mhm.
And you notice, if anybody's really paid attention, when I had that huge epic conflict, it was a long conflict. There were people saying, "Hey, DW, man, you got angry, you got mad." I was like, they didn't understand what I was doing. Sometimes the only way to show the truth is to keep hammering at it. You have to hammer it and keep it in front of people's face. So eventually, because everybody says you're wrong when there's said I was wrong, there was a conflict. So I kept hammering it, kept hammering it, kept hammering it, because I know how people's mind works. You'll forget something 5 minutes from now, but if I keep it in front of your face, eventually the truth comes out. And you notice, for the most part, after that conflict kind of resolved itself, things died down. You had a couple of people pop up that they were harassed and messed with, but then I would say, "Hey, yo, y'all need to chill out," and then they chilled out, and they would leave those people alone. Because once you figure out what it is, and you know who's starting it, you know who's spiritually doing stuff like literally casting spells and doing stuff like that, and then you know who's kind of the structural organization behind all the foolishness that was going on, it stopped for the most part. It's still a little bit of aggravation here and there, and those are trolls. I think it's about 12 trolls left out of all those people. So when you notice that behavior, and then you notice all the other things associated with it, it's spiritual. And people discount the spiritual aspect of Dogman, completely discount it, because they want to hear about like a scary story. Like, it ran in front of the car, it scratched my window, it was on the roof, it was this, it was that. They want to hear that type of frightening encounter. But there's only certain numbers of certain types of encounters you can have. There's I saw it, I drove by it, or I rode my bike by it and I got a glimpse of it. I was alone in the woods and it came out at me or on me, and it chased me, or I retreated. And then it gets into the type of encounters that are around your household. And then that's pretty much it. Like, I'm out in the woods and it came to my house, or it left my house, or it was at my house. And then outside of that, the only thing you have is it's inside my house. Once you get to the point where people are talking about something's inside of their house, it's purely demonic. And if you even go back and listen to the shifting content itself, like listen to Dogman encounters, like that were coming out, that witnesses were talking about, there was a shift across the board where people were starting to talk about things that were in their house. And I remember saying, "Hey guys, all this worship is making this thing stronger and making it stronger." People like, "Hey, you're crazy, you're silly, you're crazy." And then that's when I said, "You know what? I'm gonna do the encounters," but I used to hold on to them like there was something precious. Like, yeah, I got these Dogman encounters. I got 600 of them. I just said, "Screw it, you can have them." You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not gonna be, Satan not gonna be in front of God petitioning me saying, "Oh yeah, he's idolizing a werewolf or whatever the hell it is." So I just gave him. I don't care. I just give it out now because I don't want it to be anything special. It's really not anything special.
Mhm.
Bigfoot's not anything special. It's good to know about. It's good to categorize, but the majority of the human beings on this planet will never encounter Bigfoot or Dogman. We are a niche of a niche of a niche market. Um,
Mhm.
and it's a profitable niche if you're in it the right way, but it's a niche of a niche of a niche. The real issue is, for me and people like you, we find ourselves, should I say that? How do I say that? I should just say it. We find ourselves as Christian men and women in the seat of darkness, like in a dark cave. Um, and all around us, there's monsters, there's everything else you want to name it. But walking through a dark cave, and we have flashlights and torches. And our job is to walk people out of that cave who want to come out of that darkness. Some people have things attached to them. Some people have fell away from God and they forgot, they lost family members or they saw something in the church that hurt them. Our job is to walk those people out of that cave. So we take 10 out the cave, then go back in and find more. That's our job. I think what happens is we get confused and we start kind of paying attention to the shadows all over the cave. Oh, it looks like a werewolf over there in the cave. And now you're just fascinated with looking at that werewolf. Or you're fascinated at looking at that Bigfoot. Or you're fascinated with looking at the Mothman. No. That's not what we're here for. At least that's not what I'm here for anymore. So that's kind of where I stand on things. It's definitely spiritual across the board. And if you're wise and you pay attention to it, not only can you see it, taste it, touch it, and smell it, I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, and I noticed that there was a shift, I guess, in all of us in our thinking. There are a lot of people who I've come under attack recently, just saying that I'm spreading disinformation because I'm telling people that these things have a metaphysical aspect to them and that they are not purely a flesh and blood animal, which a lot of these people want to believe they're animals. And in fact, I went so far as to say that Dogman is not really a cryptid because the study of cryptozoology has nothing to do with Dogman. It's not an animal. It's not a cryptid. It's not an unknown animal at all. And I've even thought, as of late, I've come across a lot of shapeshifter type stories, and I'm even leaning toward maybe that being another possibility. I know that sounds nuts to a lot of people, but have you come across anything like that, Dark?
Specifically, what, shapeshifters?
Yeah.
Yes. When I look at my data sets that I have for it, it's a very small portion of data. It's so small that it didn't even add up and didn't end up in my final set of things that were going on. It was like 4 or 5 shape-shifting type encounters. And all of those were attributed to just pure skinwalkers shape-shifting into a wolf. So yeah, I've run across it, but I didn't really add it to my data sets because the sample was too small. When we start talking about just Dogman as a whole, and you have to give credence to the fact that there's something physical. There's no way around it because I've seen photos that are clearly physical. I had people send me footprints that are clearly physical, with hairs and everything else. So you have to acknowledge that there's a physical aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know anything for sure is the real question. I think there's a lot of certainty that we talk about this subject with across the board. It's certainly this, it's certainly that, it's absolutely this. That's why when people hear me talk about Dogman, I talk about the 4-lane highway where it's these possibilities of what it is. And it's important to leave it in the realm of possibility because in that realm, you leave yourself leeway to change your mind and grow in your opinions on it. And I think what's happening is in this community is there's people who've taken hard stances. Oh, it's definitely flesh and blood, or it's definitely metaphysical. No, I'm in the middle of, not even the middle. I'm on the 4-lane highway and I got a car in each lane driving. I want to capture the information so I can make up my mind. I think I'm almost there where I've come to my conclusions. I got a little bit more to look at. What I don't understand is this, and I don't see how people do it. I guess it's my training, like engineering background, that I don't understand how people can study one subject for for years and years and years. Like, you have to come to a conclusion on your thoughts of it and present that conclusion to somebody and then move on to the next thing. So like I'm going to be shifting from Dogman probably in another 3 months once I put out the rest of these encounters, and shifting to other things because I've had enough data sets to understand it's definitely not just physical. It's what people will call metaphysical, or demonic, or however you want to call it. There's both elements to it. And then even down to what I would say the possibility of consumption of too much content leading to some form of
Opa.
either hypnosis or possession. Like, honestly. So when that was the real doozy for me, bro. When people started calling me saying, man, Dark Waters, you said I shouldn't listen to that Dogman content as much as I did, and they were apologizing. Like, I used to listen to Dogman and content in my sleep, and I hated you. I'm like, well, I don't even freaking know you, bro. Like, how you hate me? Man, I just hated you. I'm like, bro, I'm one of the coolest dudes on the planet. Oh, now that I talk to you, I know you're cool, but I didn't like you. Well, why? I don't know. And I said, well, did it have to do with what this person said, or this person said, or this person said? I don't know. And they couldn't answer. And it was person after person after person. When I said that, like, y'all need to stop consuming the content like you're consuming it. And it was like it broke a spell. And I was like, okay, well, cool. Something was going on. So, I just think we have to be open to all possibilities in order to get to the true data, because all we have is data. We have to acknowledge that all we have is data points and data sets from different people. And then some of it's corrupted because we know in this community, specifically talking about Dogman, that there's a portion of people who are purely mentally ill, and they just call and say the craziest, insane things. Like, I saw a man outside of my window and he transformed into a Dogman. Or I was in my backyard and a Dogman jumped over my fence and it had a belt on and it had a blade and a necklace. Like, you have those kind of things, right? But nonetheless, when we take the data points that we have, we can draw conclusions. It may not be the most accurate conclusion, but at least somebody's drawing a conclusion. And then from there, you can start all over if you want to, or you can compare your data to somebody else's data. And that's where we need to be in this field of Dogman, like in the community. We need to move beyond just encounters. Encounters pay bills for people, and that's cool. But if you want to get to the truth, you got to move beyond encounters.
And when you say move beyond encounters, you mean to move toward trying to postulate on theories of these things, or what do you mean exactly?
I mean, when I say move beyond encounters, how many encounters do you need to hear to understand what's going on?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How many encounters do you need to hear to understand, to come to some form of conclusion for yourself? It doesn't mean it's 100% accurate conclusion, but how many encounters do you need to hear in order to come to a conclusion? Like, for example, let's take a physics class or a chemistry class, right? You go to class, you go sit there and you take lessons, right? Boom, 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 boom. I go to this class and there's an expectation that at some point in time I've learned a lesson, right? Well, what ends up happening, I call it the Dogman trap. What ends up happening with the Dogman trap is you go to Dogman class and you just constantly in class, constantly in class. And there's this closed loop where other people are talking and speculating, but nobody has anything real, formative or anything formatted for you to discuss. It's just people speculating. Oh, I think it's this. I think Dogmen are aliens. Oh, I think Dogmen are Nephilim. I think, which would be Raphaelim, not Nephilim, right? I think Dogmen are interdimensional beings. Oh, I think they can cloak. I think this. I think that. And when I talk to people and I say, hey, you're a Dogman content creator, right? How many people have told you about Dogman cloaking? Well, I've had a couple of witnesses tell me. Specifically, how many people? They can't tell me. Okay, where did it happen? They can't tell me. What were the circumstances? Was it sunny? Was it rainy? What was any of that? They can't tell you that stuff because it's about the encounter. It's not about coming to the truth of what's going on. And that's all I'm saying. We got to get to the point to where I don't want to use the word mature enough, where we're professional enough to where we're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, as opposed to just entertaining with encounters. It's cool to entertain people with encounters, but you need to do both. You got to come up with some data points so you know what's happening.
Somebody asked in the chat, they said, Dark Waters, I got a question for you. And then Sir Paul says, have you ever seen a Dogman yourself? If so, what's a quick story of what happened to you?
Well, my Dogman encounter is posted everywhere. You can check it out. It's called, it's on my channel. It's one of my first videos. When I went to Taylor with my friend Skip, I'm not going to retell the story just because you don't know it, but I'll tell you, you can go look on my channel. It's, I now believe in Dogman. It was when I didn't believe it was true, but it's there. It's in the first year, maybe like in the first 14 videos, where I went to Taylor, Mississippi, being nosy. That's how I found out what was going on in Taylor, Mississippi. So yes, for the record. And there's this thing in the Dogman community, is this thing is like this purity test. Like, have you ever had a Dogman encounter yourself? Mm-hmm. You want a little bit of this Dogman cocaine? You got a little bit of that Dogman crack? Yeah, I had my, you know what I'm saying? Well, you know what I'm saying? I had my encounter and I was stupid and I'd never go do that again. That was the dumbest thing I ever did. And I never do it. I went for it. And people, let me tell you this. Well, if I remember when I started doing the full retard thing, right? People got offended. I can't believe you seeing people going full retard. I said, bro, you guys don't understand. I'm the originator of it. I was the first person to go full retard, to go look for it and get left on the side of the road and almost poo and pee on myself with Dogman in the bushes right there. That's why I came up with it. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's a weird thing because my brother lived in Michigan for a long time, and he was the one that told me, hey, there's this thing called Michigan Dogman, because up to that point, all I knew was werewolves, and that's what I was looking in that direction for, werewolves. I did not know what a Dogman was, and until the late 90s, I mean, all we had was just going to the library and looking stuff up, and I would talk to people about their encounters, but not one person in the areas of Texas that I had spoken to, which at that point was probably about 50, that had encounters, had ever mentioned anything calling it a Dogman. It was always like werewolf looking or wolf looking or upright wolf, you know. Nobody ever said Dogman, not once. And so my brother was the one, he came back from Michigan and he said, yeah, this thing's called the Michigan Dogman, look it up. That's when we started looking up, and unfortunately I found the wrong person and started dealing with him, and that was a whole nother thing. But the Dogman name, you know, was something that I had never heard of. What I did find interesting, though, was that Taylor, Mississippi, Taylor, Texas, and Taylor, Michigan all have people who claim that they live around those towns, which I was like, I mean, that's a synchronicity, but I don't believe in like coincidences, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think that because that name, it's just an innocuous name. It doesn't really have any kind of, you know, it doesn't have any connotation to werewolves, Dogman, or anything. It's just those names, and there happens to be, you know, people in the areas of Taylor, Michigan, Taylor, Texas, and Taylor, Mississippi who claim to have seen these things. Do you think that there's any connection to the name?
I don't want to like give you an inaccurate answer. So what I'll say is this. My thoughts on it is, we know there's a migratory pattern for these creatures, or at least I know I put it out, and based on encounters and sightings that people have had. Part of me wants to say that maybe those locations are a part of that migratory pattern, right? Then another part of me knows from working in politics and political science and working on campaigns that anytime you put something out, there's these carbon copies that come out. So if you put out Taylor, Mississippi, somebody else is going to talk about a Taylor or something similar to that. It's a spinoff, right? It's like any ad campaign. If you put out a attack ad on somebody's going to spin off your ad. It's just kind of how it works. So I don't know if and I'm not accusing anybody of this because I haven't actually paid attention to that. I feel like some of it may be migratory pattern and some of it may be spinoff from the original stuff about Taylor, Mississippi. And that truly does happen in this community. When someone comes out with something that ends up being popular and hot, there's a whole bunch of spinoffs and carbon copies of it. It's just a sign that you did some good work, but it is a part of it. So I suspect it's probably a little bit of both. the migratory pattern, which definitely goes through Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part being a little bit of the spinoff or the copycatting.
Yeah, the Taylor, Michigan thing, I had not heard anything about that until recently. And even though my brother had lived in Michigan and he had been to Taylor, Michigan, he had a friend who lived in a house that was haunted. That's the only thing I knew about it, Taylor, Michigan. And that friend had said, yeah, I lived in a house there and it was haunted. They had a bunch of weird stuff happen. But that was only recent that I heard anything Dogman related in the last couple of years. My encounter in Taylor, Texas happened in 1990. So it was a long time ago, and a lot of the stories that came out of my hometown were old. I mean, they were from a long time ago. It goes all the way back to the 60s and 70s. And I know that I actually was contacted, and I covered a story from an elderly couple that was, I think, south of Taylor, Mississippi. And I put it on this other channel. But and that was a weird one. They actually had a Dogman that had little dogs like running around with it like in a pack. It was weird. And this one guy actually claimed that one of the little dogs tried to attack him while this creature was kind of back off to the side. That was another thing I was going to tell you. I mean, you've covered so many Dogman reports, and like somebody just mentioned, Siege of Lockett Ranch. That's a very famous case. But there's so many different questions that me and my audience would have to ask someone like you who's been covering this for as long as you have. I have a lot of people who ask me if these things travel with coyotes, if they travel with wolves, if they travel with dogs. I say emphatically yes, but does that prove that they are some kind of animal or that they are able to be an animal? To me, it doesn't, just because I can travel as a homeless person and have a bunch of dogs around me. That doesn't mean that I'm, just because the term is dog man. And a lot of people want to try to categorize this as some sort of animal that we undiscovered species or whatever you want to call it. And so I was wondering what your take was on that. Like, do you feel like this thing, is there a flesh and blood Dogman that runs around out there? And if so, do you know anything of the nature of it being? Like, can it control animals? Is it just a highly intelligent animal, this physical one? Or is it one of these things where these things just live and then they die and then they have ghosts like we do, and they become spirits? I mean, like, what is your take on all that? What do you? Because I know you think a lot like me, but there's some things I wanted to ask you.
Well, I mean, let's just go into it. I'll give you my official take on it. Earlier, I was referring to a 4-lane highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't pin myself down on any lane of the highway because there's evidence to prove that all these lanes exist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's evidence to prove that there's these original forms of upright walking wolves, which I call like something that would have been created, like a hybrid being that would have been created based on biblical narratives of, fallen angels, or occultist narratives of aliens doing DNA splicing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's these things that people have encountered and seen that are extremely big. We're talking about 12, 13 feet tall. We're talking about 1,300 pounds, pure muscle, ridiculous, something like out of a horror movie. And I have classified those things as recent or modern day genetic modifications. Then my other lane is a lane where there is heavily demonic activity or occult activity. And I put shapeshifters and things like that, witches who summon things in those lanes, right? And then my last lane is just a flesh and blood creature that's out there in the woods that's running around and doing what it does. So what I mean by flesh and blood is, it's just a regular animal that evolved to the point to where it can walk on its hind legs. Now, to answer your more specific, deeper question, do they actually run with packs of wolves, coyotes, and dogs? Absolutely, hands down, no doubt about it. They dominate those packs. I've talked to witnesses where they went elk hunting and it sent wolves into their camp. It was surrounded by 12 wolves. It was sending 2 wolves in at a time based on its howling and its growling. And as they killed those wolves, 3 of them came in, they killed 3, the rest of them ran, And as those wolves ran, it killed the wolves that ran. And then it harassed them for the rest of the night in their camp. So um, they definitely have relationships, or maybe it's a dominant alpha male relationship with other animals, whether it be coyotes, dogs, wolves. Um, and I think there's some truth to when people, when there's those stories where they say a person was attacked by a pack of wild dogs. I think there is a little bit of element of truth to the news story. Um, when they say a pack of wild dogs, it doesn't necessarily mean that there were no regular dogs there. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It just had something else with them. So when they say, "Oh, this person was mauled by a pack of wild dogs," they're not necessarily lying. It's just they're not disclosing, not telling 100% the truth. There's other things there with them, and that's one of the things I wanted to touch on. So hopefully that answers your question. But that's my official stance. Those four highways, or those that 4-lane highway is my official stance on Dogman. I don't think we can chunk down to either one of those highways and say there's a definite answer. Once you get to that point of you kind of get to the point where if you know all the answers to everything, then you have to realize that you know absolutely nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I say I know this to be certain, then I'm certain that I'm ignorant. And I'm never ignorant on anything. I always leave myself room to learn and grow.
Yeah, and that's a lot. For me, I don't know. Like, I started out believing that it was a flesh and blood thing, and I'm kind of to the point now to where I lean toward them being metaphysical, but also not just metaphysical, but like completely spiritual, and like there are some that are completely spiritual, or maybe they can just leave their corporeal, they can leave that state and go into an altered state of existence. Do you think there's any truth to them being interdimensional, like maybe coming from another plane of like the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, anything like that?
I'm not sure that. I mean, there could be truth. There could be truth to it, all of it. That's why I say I'm open to all of it. After talking to so many people, man, you kind of get to a point where you question what your purpose in all of this is, right? Like, I'm beyond whether it's real or not. I'm beyond how the encounters take place, the types, where it comes from, why it's there. I'm at a point now as to what is the purpose of, like, me being in the field, and what can this be used for, right? As far as, we talk to witnesses all the time. At least I talk to. I'm pretty sure you talk to witnesses all the time. And there has to be a greater purpose for these conversations than just trying to figure out what's up with Dogman, or just trying to figure out what's up with Bigfoot. It has to be a greater purpose, and that's kind of where I am. And I think the greater purpose is that people learn more about themselves, and they can verify both good and evil when they see these things. Like, for example, when I was a kid, and I was in Mississippi, and I was 12 years old. Now, anybody who's heard me talk for a long time, they know my family was heavy duty hoodoo practitioners on my mother's side of the family. I learned that good and evil existed because I was leaving out of my grandmother's house at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and was headed to another house. And there was a 13-foot tall black shadow with fiery, glowing red eyes coming from me that froze me in place. And one of my family members had to save me. And that's how I learned there was good and evil, right? When you validate good and evil, it's an eye-opening experience for people, and the validation of good because of evil is transformative for people. And I think that's where I don't say that's where, I'm not going to say that's where we should be. That's where I am with it, because anything else to me at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense. Like, all of those, everything is possible. I mean, literally, there's people who I've spoken to in Southeast Louisiana who were out fishing at night. They saw giant lights in the skies and what clearly was a UFO. And then all of a sudden they heard howling and saw these upright walking wolves running around the lake. I mean, these guys, they ain't lying. These ain't the type of guys that lie. This Boudreaux and Thibodeau. Boudreaux and Thibodeau don't lie about nothing. They ain't on Facebook. They don't have no reason to lie about it. So to me, it's more important what we're doing in this field as opposed to where they come from at this point, because it's clearly confusing and conflated. And even when you put it all down on paper, even when you look at it all, there's no definite answer, in my opinion. So I don't give a definite answer, because there's no definite answer. There's a infinite possibility.
Yeah. So you're kind of like me. You're just open to, until we can we can't really formulate an opinion and say exactly what it is until you get more and more information. But it seems like to me, the more information I get, the more I don't know. I'll start to think, yeah, I'm getting a pretty good grasp on what I think this is in any of those subjects. And then next thing you know, there's more information that comes in. And they do tend to kind of bleed together too. I think that there is a strong connection. There's people talking about in the chat about these things being some sort of I don't want to say aliens, but yeah, they're people that are asking. It says the Conquistador says, why can't they be both? Aliens are able to come in and out. Do you think that there's a connection between them and UFOs?
I just admitted that when I said that, there was people who saw them in the swamps. It has to be something there. You know what I'm saying? Again.
But I mean, do you personally think that though? I mean, you've heard the story.
Yeah, because I've had encounters where people describe just that. So again, I'm not pinned down to one line of thought on it. I'm open to all lines of thought because I have data on all lines of thought. The problem is that's the circular loop that people get caught up in. And if you don't break out of the loop, the circular loop of, do you think it's this? Do you think it's that? Because there was a counter about this. Hey, did you hear that encounter where the Dogman came walking through the brick wall? Oh, it's a circular perpetual loop. It's just going to keep looping and looping and looping and looping and looping.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens with that loop, Wolf, is people keep injecting things into the loop. And the problem with it is you have to try and parse out what's true and what's false. So imagine when you were a kid, you used to have your bicycle, right? And you would take that back wheel up in the air and you would spin the pedal, and the wheel on your back, the back wheel of your bike would be spinning, right? You would spin it real fast and then you let it go and watch it spin. That's the Dogman topic, right? So it's spinning, 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 spinning. People holding these conversations. And then remember the kid who used to take the straw and he would put it on the spoke and it go brrr. The injections into the topic are people taking a straw, taking a stick, and they're hitting the spokes. Well, at some point in time, you have to be aware and conscious of there's always something being injected into the narrative. And that every time something's new and is injected, you have to go and try and verify that new thing that's being injected. So that's why I formulated that highway theory where, okay, there's a significant amount of encounters in deep woods. And these are the commonalities in the deep woods. It looks like this. It's black. It looks like a black timber wolf, or it looks like a red fox that's upright walking red fox, right? The eye shine is this. And then when you come over to suburban / rural with housing areas, then this is what people are seeing. And you can definitely see that, okay, further out in the woods, like in the deep woods, they're different. The descriptions are different than inside of these particular semi-rural and rural areas. And then urban areas, you have things different. Then you have outlying encounters like UFO things where they've seen lights in the sky, and even crazier stuff than that I haven't even spoken to people about, where people are seeing literally black triangles in the sky while they're riding in their car. They see a giant black triangle and then they see a Dogman running across. Or the portal stuff where hunters have seen portals open up in the woods and they see a Dogman come out of a portal like it's a Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. All those things I've had reports on, and all those encounters I've walked through and verified and vetted those stories with those people. So when you have that kind of data coming in, you can't say it's certainly this. Only thing you can say is these are the data sets, these are the encounters, these are the possibilities. So to answer your question, I went around the block and then climbed up the wall. Yes. UFOs, it could be interdimensional, because demons are interdimensional themselves. It could be a whole bunch of things. That's why I got to the point and got to the conclusion, hey man, it can't really be about what it is, because it could be any of these things. And there's only one way to figure out what it is. That means you're going to go capture one of those things. And I'm not going to do that. There's no way in hell, after my experience After all the people I talk to, I don't care. I don't love it enough to go capture it. And I'm not going to be the person that risks his life to get a definite answer. We tried to do it with the camera project, and everybody knows how that went with all the foolishness. So, as far as I'm concerned, I did my due diligence. I had the data sets. I wrote out the camera project to try and monitor it and get the evidence that had its problems and its issues and its haters. And so now I'm to the point to where, okay, we're coming to our conclusions and we're going to put out a white paper and then we're moving on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how you address a subject. That's how you research a topic.
Yeah, and when you did the investigation into what happened to you in Taylor, Mississippi, you actually didn't see what was coming through the woods, but you felt that. Did you feel like it was 100% like you knew that's what it was?
No, we heard it. Okay, so if we go back to Taylor, Mississippi, specifically, the reason why I went was because Skip was actually taking me to areas where people had Dogman activity. So I only talked about that location where I was. He took me in a farmer's house that had Dogman Killer's chickens. He took me to another lady's house where she had a whole bunch of crazy activity going on in her house, where she had scratches on the wall. And then he took me back to his exact location where he had his Dogman encounter. So again, when we start talking about an encounter and doing research, you're right in the area where there's verified encounters, right? And then you're with the witness who had the verified encounter. And so me and that witness are on the side of the road with the truck doors open, and he's nervous as hell about the sun going down and we need to go. And then he hears these things coming in. I hear them coming in, and it's the exact same sound he's heard in the past right there. And he freaks out and he ends up leaving me, long story short. And I'm left there on the side of the road. And do I see something? Absolutely. I see a gigantic shadow move from behind one tree to the other before he comes back to get me. So when someone says, I've had people ask this question before, like, well, he didn't really see anything. The truth of the matter is I'm in the location where there's Dogman activity. There's been verified Dogman activity in that area since I disclosed it. So yes, I believe it was Dogman in the area 100%. It's not like anybody in Taylor's talking about Bigfoot activity. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. One thing happened to me, DW, I was going to tell you, I don't know, we've talked a lot about different stuff, but I don't think I've ever told you this. I spent a night in a building. It was a retirement home that was being built, and it was a large complex, and I was all by myself, and I was working like long hours, like 16 hours a day, every day, no days off, and I did that for a solid month, like in August. I guess it was probably 15 years ago, something like that. And so I had one night in particular, I always felt like there was something around there, like out on the outside, nothing inside, never anything happened inside in the whole building, but it was always on the outside. I felt weird and uneasy. And one night in particular, while I was just sitting behind the front desk by myself, I had a little portable TV back then. You could still, it was 16 years ago. And I was watching TV and whatever, and had just been talking on the phone. And so I was talking to my mother, and I told her, I said, I feel like there's something outside this place that's kind of stalking me. And she knew about my encounter, and she's like, well, mijo, just pray, and she was a very devout Christian. She wasn't Catholic, but she was non-denominational, but she said, just to pray, and just don't go out and be out very long. Just do your round as you have to do it and come back in. So you have to be on camera, so you had to do a round. So about middle of the night, I just quit doing my rounds because I honestly felt like there was something in the woods to the northwest corner in particular of those woods that surrounded that building. Now that area is all grown up. It's off of an area called 620. They've even built like another grocery store out there, and there's all kinds of people living out there. So it's not that spooky when you go out there now. I took my wife out there, and she's like, this isn't spooky. And I'm like, yeah, because there's houses and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, imagine that being the only building, and then this being nothing but oaks and cedar all the way around, and there's nothing else. And that was it. And so, and I told her, I said, I had the distinct feeling that something was watching me, but really bad that in particular night. And I went inside the building and I sat down, I locked the doors, And I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't get it out of my mind about how much I tried to pray and how much I tried to steady myself. I kept thinking that what I saw when I was 15 was out there and that it was going to come and I was going to see it walk in front of the double doors. And for some reason, there were cameras there too. And I thought, this thing can probably can cloak itself from the cameras. And I just had these thoughts going through my head. And I don't know why. I'm not one of those people that just lets their imagination run away with them and I'm all like hysterical. I don't get like that. I don't get rattled easy. People that know me very well know that I'm not that kind of person. I'm not like a type person. I usually keep my calm up until the moment of whatever. And so I was just like, watching and I kept thinking something is really wrong here. And I heard a weird bump against the wall. And so at that point, I just went to the back where there was a bunch of filing cabinets and stuff, like a little back area. And I locked myself in that room and then put a chair up there up against it and barricaded myself in there. And I know that sounds crazy. I mean, it was like, and armed or not, I just felt scared. I was just like, what am I going to do? I don't feel like this is going to help me, and so I stayed in there for the last like 4 or 5 hours of the shift. And it was kind of embarrassing, I guess. I mean, I kind of felt like, and then my shift ended at 6 a.m. So it was still dark when I walked out to go to my truck and leave. And I just kept feeling like something was going to attack me. But then I went and I just dreaded all day going back to that place. And then the next day when I went back, and I didn't feel it at all. Like that night, it was like night and day. It was totally different. I didn't feel that feeling. There was no oppressive feeling. There was like, it wasn't there. And I've said this before. I haven't seen it again. I've seen something that I thought was mimicking it in a building I worked at, which was, I think, demonic. But I haven't seen that particular entity again. But I believe I felt its presence on more than one occasion, like around me. And then another time in my house that I lived at in South Austin, I felt like it was in the backyard. And it was weird because my roommate, had just gone up the street to get some food. And I just sat there feeling like there was something right outside of my, in my backyard, right outside of my sliding glass door. And my dog was acting weird and he went to the back room and I couldn't get him to come back. And I felt like I was paralyzed, like I couldn't get up. And I thought that this thing was in my backyard. Now, the only way that is possible is if this thing is some sort of spiritual entity or it can move, without being seen, because obviously it's not physically, at least I couldn't see it in my backyard at that time. And I don't know that it was physically or not physically at that building I worked at, but I did feel like that it was there. And,
I mean, do you really want to dissect that on air? I mean, we could dissect it privately, but I don't know if you want to dissect what you just told me on air because, for example, in my mind, we got to start with certain things. Like, all right, we're talking about an entity that strikes you as a Dogman or something werewolfish or something slightly demonic.
mm-hmm.
The first thing I would ask you is, okay, well, where did you get the nickname Wolf? Where did that start in your life?
My encounter.
Okay, so Wolf started with your encounter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
people teasing me. That's how it started. People teasing me.
Right. So your encounter was impactful enough to where you actually it changed your life enough to where there was something that shifted in a personality trait to where people start calling you Wolf. So I would start there. Then I would go back to the day that you had your original encounter. We would have to start with breakfast to figure out if there was anything else that happened that day that was different than any other day. Or then we from starting with that day and walking through it to the time you got up in the morning to the time you went to work. From there, we would have to walk through, okay, nothing weird happened. Okay, let's walk through how your life was. Who were you dating? What was going on? Were you having problems? And so that's how you walk back through and figure out what it is, as opposed to saying whether it's something demonic or whether it's something physical. We know the things that cause demonic infestations and manifestations, right? That's well documented. So we can easily eliminate whether it's one of those by understanding where that person was in their life at that point in time, if the person's honest. If the person says to me, and again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying this is Wolf, this is a hypothetical. So let's take Wolf out of that equation and let's put Bobby Brown in that equation. So Bobby Brown is at work, he in there dancing. It's my prerogative. And he goes through the same scenario. I'm gonna be like, Bobby, let's start with the beginning, bro. What was you doing in your life at that point in time when you had this encounter? And I would ask Bobby stuff like, all right, Bobby, you was talking about tenderonis in your music. Was you like messing with little girls or something? No, man, I wasn't doing that. Okay. I would go through every little thing in that person's life until I found what lines up or what could provoke like a demonic encounter. So if nothing, absolutely nothing, no Santeria, no voodoo, no hoodoo, no burning candles, no nothing, none of that's there, then okay, were you, had you recently had a violent encounter? Were you a violent person where you were fighting people? Or did you find yourself where you were always in conflict at that age, which is a spirit of strife? Were you experiencing any of that? As we go through those things and eliminate them, now we know we're eliminating the possibility of it being like something demonic. And then we go back and go through your encounter again, and we go and try and look for physical things and say, okay, well, are you absolutely sure, the sound that you heard, where it came from, what it was? You sure you weren't freaking out and there was something in your head? You know what I'm saying? What did it sound like? Describe it. And I take the person back to that moment and we go back into that sound. Did it vibrate? Did it not vibrate? How long did it last? A second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds? All that, it's a lot that goes into dissecting an encounter in order to actually figure out what it is. And for you personally, if you want to do that, you have to look at it from that standpoint. How it affected your life, how it shifted your life. Because basically what I'm hearing right now is you had an encounter, your nickname turned to Wolf. Clearly you had some kind of previous, not fascination, but interest in the paranormal. We know that people who have interest in the paranormal, the occult, things like that, at a younger age, they tend to pick up things that attach to them. So for me, it's like, okay, you sound like, okay, somebody else. I read books, I read this, I did this, I had this encounter. You're along the roadway or the pathway of someone who had something attached to them that's either demonic or something, picked up something along the way. All your signs are pointing to that to me right now. So I will put you in that lane and I will drive in a car with you and we will hold that conversation. Because it's even the encounter itself. It sounds like I didn't hear it all because I was trying to text, but even the encounter itself, it sounded like it was an isolated building. And it just wasn't the original encounter. It was in a building or some type of structure. It wasn't in the deep woods. It didn't fit the profile of a deep woods encounter. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Well, it was surrounded by woods.
Okay, but it was surrounded. Okay, so it was surrounded by woods. Was it isolated woods? How far was it away from the city?
It was pretty far from the main road. Like there, if you went about 2 miles up the road, there was like a pharmacy, but it closed at like 9, and there were really no houses around there. There is now. It's all grown up now. This was like 15, 16 years ago, but at the time there was nothing there. You were out there by yourself, yeah. But I never felt that fear until that night. And to answer your question, I'll tell you what happened though. When I was 15, before I became, I was a Christian from a young age, but I was in full-on rebellion mode, and I was living my life like a juvenile delinquent, and basically had been in and out of facilities. And my friend that I was running around with, he was the same way. We were both like, and we had actually, it was Halloween night, 1990. We had just come from actually throwing rocks and eggs at cop cars.
What when we say facilities, we mean like for fighting, like prison facilities,
yeah,
mental
getting
facilities?
in trouble and having to do some timeouts, and then going to like, places that, you don't want to have to be in. But yeah, it was all juvenile stuff. I didn't get in trouble as an adult. I didn't do time as an adult, let's put it that way. So yeah, we were in and out of places, and I ended up in a few different places. It was like 3 or 4 different types of places. And so I was constantly in trouble. And we had just come from that night Halloween festivities of throwing rocks and eggs at cop cars, which was just what we were doing that night. And my tia, who was kind of like my surrogate abuelita, that's my grandmother in Spanish, she was the one that kind of was my grandmother because my grandmother had died when I was little, like 2. So she was the one that was always telling me, mijo, you can't be going out doing all these bad things. My friend's mother, Martha, she was a devout. They are actually Pentecost. She's a very devout. They're Hispanic, but very devout Christians. And them two were always like, you're going to get in trouble. And my tia was like, you're going to see the cadejo, which is like the black dog, you know, and it's like a curse, you know, and I was always like, "Why mentiras? I don't want to hear this bull crap. I'm not gonna see no black dog, whatever." And then she talked about the hombre lobo running around. The black people in my hometown called it the haint. The white people just called it a werewolf. They didn't know what it was. The Mexicans just called it the hombre lobo, which basically means like wolf man or man wolf. And I didn't believe in any of it. I thought it was all just a bunch of fairy tales, just like everybody's house has a kukui in the back, in the closet. Yeah, it's going to come get you if you don't behave or say your prayers, whatever. That's the attitude I took on this thing. I totally did not believe in it. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. I had a few encounters with like ghost type things. So I knew that was real, but it was rare. So I just thought, you know what, up to that point, it wasn't real, like a factor in my life. But that night, yeah, so maybe there was something going on, because my friend that I was with at that time, at that night, he became a preacher in my hometown, and he's still a preacher in my hometown. And he has had one or two other demonic encounters since then that kind of reaffirmed his faith. And he believes that it kind of was like God pushing him toward doing, you know, his work and all that. It took me years to find the light. I mean, I
pause right for a second, Wolf. It actually was God pushing both of y'all towards doing y'all work. He went into the church, and you went onto YouTube as a Christian, proclaiming Christ into the darkness. He pushed both of y'all in the right direction.
A long time later, though. I mean, I went through all kinds of heck before that. I mean, I was a hellraiser, working downtown, doing all kinds of nonsense, whatever. But it took me a while.
You gotta be a hellraiser to be here, bro. You can't be. You can't not be a hellraiser and be on YouTube. The only type of people who survive this are titans that have been to war. Think about it. Everybody that's been here that's like, I'm going to be on YouTube and I'm going to be in the Dogman community. If you weren't a monster before you got here, you ran away. So, I'm sorry, but go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
Oh, and I wanted to tell Sir Paul, Jared, Crazy Indian, Neurot, Sir Paul, all you guys that donated money. I saw you did it. I just was busy talking here, and I want to thank everybody. And John Villafranca, who always donates, always great. Everybody who's donated money, really appreciate it. We're doing the conference in August, and this is going to help a lot. But donations are appreciated, but not expected. So don't feel like you obligated, guys, to do that. Curtis, what's going on? Also, I wanted to point out, Curtis Turner is a very good friend, no relation. But Curtis, what's happening? Because people keep thinking that you're my brother, Curtis, and I was like, nope, my brother is somewhere on here. But anyway. We're having a conversation with those of you who might have just joined us. We're actually having a conversation with Dark Waters. You're going to have to go back and start from the beginning to listen to everything. Dark, it's a shame that we're not going to get you to come to the conference, man. But I do, congratulations on your son going to college. That's pretty cool. And will this be his first year?
Yeah, it's going to be his first year. I got two. I got him going to college this year, and I got another one going to college next year. So I'm getting them out of my house. Good guys. Getting them out of my house. 3.9 GPAs, warriors. I'm proud of them, so they're good to go.
Yeah, I've been talking to you before, and I've heard them in the background running around, and you know. But it's funny because, like, I mean, the last time that I think I talked to you and I heard them was like 2 or 3 years ago, and so that feels weird that they're and mine's graduating from college, and yours are going to college. It's crazy, but you're about my same age, right? I think so. I think we're about the same age.
How old are you?
I'm 46, going on 47.
Yeah, we're right about the same age.
Yeah. And so you living in New Orleans now, and I wanted to ask this question too, because at some point we need to do a record. We need to record together and go into some deep dives about a few things. I really want to do that. But tonight we don't have time for all that. But I wanted to ask you a question. I've heard a lot of people ask me this, and I have no idea what this is. But so since you're from New Orleans, there's 2 things I wanted to ask. I'll start with the first one. The first one is just simple. Is there a Dogman Island out there?
No, that's south of Houma, Louisiana.
Okay.
There's definitely an island. There's multiple islands where people encounter Dogman. It's just islands in the swamp, bro.
That's all it is?
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other one is, I got an encounter from somebody who claimed that they used to be security at the Six Flags that sunk. Do you know anything about that? About there being Dogman encounters out there in that place?
Yeah. Well, Six Flags is right across from Bayou Sauvage. there's been really well documented Dogman activity in Bayou Savage. There's these kind of tunnels, not tunnels, but storm drains that lead from Bayou Savage over to the dilapidated Six Flags. And so yes, there's been significant activity out there, a lot of activity.
Have you gotten any like really like stories that you think, hey, this is something that needs to be looked into? Have you gone out there and checked it out, or?
So when I started Dogman Cams, there's a video where I walked out to the location to where the cameras to put a camera up and check on it back and forth. That was a location where there were 3 different Dogman encounters. The guy who lives out there, there's only one person who lives in that area. All the rest of the houses blew away in hurricanes. The guy who lives there, he literally comes home at about 1 o'clock to make sure he can get to his house, because if he actually gets home too late and the train blocks the track, he has to sit on the levee in his car until they move the train, because basically that railroad company owns all that land back there now. And so the last time he ended up sitting out there at night waiting for them to move the train, he had an encounter. Then he had another encounter where something was walking on his back porch, which is not really a porch. It's like his house is elevated and raised up over the lake, and there's this wraparound deck that goes around his house, the front door all the way around to the side, and he heard something walking on this deck, looked out, and he described a Dogman. But it wasn't huge. He said it had to be like a pup or something, but it was walking around out there. So yeah, Bayou Savage has a lot of activity, and Bayou Savage is a stone's throw away from that Jazzland theme park. But if I was you or anybody who was trying to go to Jazzland, I wouldn't worry about Dogman. I would worry about all the satanic rituals that were done there, because there are hardcore like rituals that have been done there. Like, and when I've talked to security guards, it's been more about the rituals than about the Dogman. And they don't even call it Dogman. They just said these big wolves that they see coming out of the storm drains and run around the storm drains. But it's more so about the ritualistic magic that's practiced there. I had a story come out of there years ago where these kids went in there and they were trying to do a ritual in front of a mirror, or in front of mirrors, not one mirror. They had situated mirrors in a circle, and they saw what you can only describe it as like a goat man, with the hooves like a goat, or in the body of a man with the horns of a goat, and scared the hell out of them out there. So yeah, it's a lot of crazy stuff. New Orleans itself is just crazy, bro. If we ever really talked about New Orleans, and I try not to talk about it because there's powers and principalities that rule this place.
Oh yeah.
And when you come against them and you're not prepared, meaning you haven't been praying and fasting for days, you'll mess around and die, have cancer, all kind of stuff. So that's why I really avoid that unless it's something big. And when I talk about it big, I really do have to prepare myself. Like if I'm going to coast and I'm talking about New Orleans, I'm fasting and praying for 10, 15 days before I even hold a conversation on it, because that's how powerful this magic is. And like I tell people, New Orleans is a place where magic traditions and magical practice is kind of like Hogwarts with Harry Potter. It's a place where magic is practiced in people's homes religiously. It's a part of the culture. It's, oh, my boyfriend wasn't paying attention to me, I'm gonna go burn a skull candle and get him to think about me. Or he cheating on me, I'm gonna get a candle the size of shaped like a penis and I'm gonna burn it and make sure he can't get hard. It's like that's what happens here. And it's a part of the culture. It's blended in and mixed into the culture. It's really a reason why when you come to New Orleans, everybody's so nice. Anybody who's been here and you've experienced New Orleans, you're like, man, the people are so cool and they're so nice and they're so welcoming. And it's really deceptive because people are not that way. People are welcoming and nice because we have a culture of, hey, you never know who knows who and who knows what. So you're just nice to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural defensive mechanism, right? And that's the culture I grew up in. That's why, I can apologize to somebody. I can squash beef with people. I can do all that because at the end of the day, I've seen and I've participated in when stuff went from 0 to 100. And once you participated, and you're just like, man, I just doesn't make any sense. I don't want anything to do with it. So, Dogman is a thing here, but it ain't the thing to worry about, honestly.
Yeah. Well, that spell you were talking about, a friend of mine's sister, she actually told us, being a bruja, well, she's a curandera, but she gets approached by people all the time. And one of the spells that we're not going to repeat it, but one of the spells that is that one where you can't function as a man. That's a very common spell that she gets asked all the time. She gets that all the time. People coming to her, women in particular, trying if a man leaves them, the woman is celoso, as in Spanish is jealous. And they'll go and they'll be like, mi esposo cheated. And so then they go and that's a very common spell. He said that's one of the ones that she gets asked the most. We were just sitting around Thanksgiving and she was there a couple of years ago and that conversation came up and she's like, I don't do that. But she gets asked, and that's crazy. And another thing I was going to tell you about you don't want to get into too far into the whole culture in New Orleans or whatever, but people have been asking me about vampires and reptilians. Is that a common thing in New Orleans?
Not vampires like people think, like fanged, sinking your teeth in and sucking blood. No, it's
like cults.
No, it's psychic vampirism where you're taking life force energy from people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vampires we have here. So you'll have people who come in town. They go to Bourbon Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
They hit like Razoo's. I don't know if Razoo's is open. Let's say they hit Rick's Cabaret. You and your wife come in town. Y'all want feeling a little frog, and y'all go to Rick's Cabaret. Y'all hanging out. Y'all have a few drinks. You meet another couple that's there. You start drinking, having fun. And you guys decide you're going to go to a next spot, right? And then next thing you know, you wake up in the hotel room. You don't remember how you got there. You don't remember any of that. You feel tired. You feel drained. You can weak to the point to where you can barely stand. That's the type of encounters that people are having down here. And those are all psychic vampire encounters. Literally. People confuse them with like UFOs. Like, I had lost time and it was UFO. No, that's a vampire encounter. And it's been happening forever. After Katrina, it was really, really bad down here because there were so few people here working. So all the people who were working in New Orleans after Katrina, because the rest of the city was dark and downtown was lit up, and you had hotels with lights and you had like Bourbon Street with lights and that type of stuff, everybody would congregate downtown. And there was just a rash of people. They weren't going missing. They weren't dying. They were just ending up in places that they didn't belong, and not that they didn't remember. I had two friends that happened to personally that I would hang out with all the time. And they like, bro, I was with this broad last night, man. And homie, I woke up way across town in Metairie in a hotel, and I don't even know what happened. And I was like, well, did you sleep with her? No, we was just in the car together. And bro, that's the only thing I remember. So it's psychic vampirism is what goes on down here. Everybody wants to, I think it's because of Anne Rice and her books and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, they got vampires. And no. The real deal is psychic vampirism. What was the other question you were asking me?
It was about reptilians, because somebody had said that you had done some work on that subject too.
Not in New Orleans. I briefly spoke about the so-called accounts of reptilians in New Orleans after Katrina, where people were saying there were reptilians coming out of the sewers and all the rest of the stuff. But I don't really have anybody who's talked about that. Like, and it's not so much a thing down here where people are talking about reptiles in New Orleans. It's more down here. It's more the violence, the murder, the possession, spirit possessions that lead to the violence and the murder and things of that nature.
Yeah, because somebody had messaged me about a funeral home here in Austin that you had mentioned reptilians, and I was like Dark Waters did, and so I was just curious about that. I was like, is that something you've heard of? Because I've never heard of that, and I live here.
Have I heard of what? The funeral home back in the day where they had the aliens? I mean, the reptilians?
Reptilians, yeah. Oh, so that's a real thing.
That was a real story from some mob-affiliated guys that I know.
Yeah,
We can talk about that privately if you want to.
Yeah. Well, there people don't realize this, but downtown Austin is really, I mean, it's still to this day run by different syndicates. I mean, those clubs they have no idea. I mean, I'm telling you, in New Orleans is too. I mean, they think, oh yeah, this is there's certain clubs down there that never have anybody in them, and they've been there for 20, 30 years. You're like, how is this possible? Well, it's, it is what it is. I know all these fools down there, so it's like, I mean, I can tell you all kinds of, but those buildings have all kinds of weird things or whatever. I had never heard the Reptilian funeral home thing. I had heard a lot of stories of reptilians here in Austin, and
it wasn't a funeral. See, that's where people get things messed up. Home. Like, it wasn't a funeral home. It was their office where this was. So that's the problem. People are like, oh, like, people got to pay attention to what was being said. But anyway.
And then when you get it secondhand, it gets all discombobulated and everything. Yeah. But yeah, so when we got to do, because I had some things I wanted to throw by you just on and I'll give the audience, they already know about this. I mean, there was a large company. There's several of them here in Austin, and one of them in particular, a friend of mine, got on an elevator with one of the executives, and he claims that his face changed when he saw it in the mirror of the elevator. And it was when this big executive had come down from another country. And and right around that same time, when I did the timeline, and I figured out that some security guard friends of ours had taken us out there because two of their guards and a couple of the people that worked there in the mornings during the pandemic had actually seen what looked like werewolf-looking creatures in the woods around. It was like a campus, it was like 30 acres or whatever. And they saw this, and I was like, and it was like not the first time that somebody had told me that they had seen werewolf-looking creatures running around one of these large companies, which are, basically out of California. These companies come out of California. But this one is a very large company. And so, yeah, it was just really weird. And I wondered about that, because it seemed like there was Dogman and Reptilian activity happening in the same vicinity. And so, yeah, I wanted to throw that by you at some point. We need to talk about that.
You have to factor in, when we start talking about things that were going on around the pandemic, you got to factor in the fact that evil was unleashed on this planet during that time period because light and dark fell out of balance significantly. It's starting to rebalance itself now. The pendulum swung so far to the dark side during that whole exercise of control, and I don't want to, what it was. So it swung so far to that side, it let a lot of bad stuff loose. It suppressed people going to church, and spiritual warfare is based on prayers. So when we pray, and we pray diligently, it charges spiritual warfare. Well, if you shut down all prayer across a country, then one side gets an advantage. And that's what you saw happening during the pandemic. And I was getting the phone calls that were proof and evidence of it. It was some of the worst insane stuff that I've ever heard. I mean, upside down head creatures, bat creatures, minotaur creatures with like ram's heads and with ram's horns and bull's horns, things with horns at the bottom of their chins, serpent-like people, like crazy stuff people were calling me with for a solid 18, 19 months. And then when things started kind of balancing back off, people like, screw that, I'm going to church. And then it was just like it all subsided. And I was like, this is crazy. This is insane. And what I try to do encounter-wise is, well, and everything in life, I try to look at everything from a 30,000-foot view. I don't want to be too close to it. I don't want to be too personal to it. I want to be way up there looking at the situation like I'm objectively looking at it, and then I can see the truth and I see the pieces of the puzzle. And man, that was horrific and terrifying. That's why I'm so worried about something like that rolling out again and us having to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because during the pandemic, I was fielding a lot of reports of a lot of weird stuff, and I've always gotten a lot of weird reports, but nothing like that. It was just like it was happening. And me and my wife had talked about that. Like, why is there so much? What you said makes sense, because it was like, why was there so much of it? Why was it ramping up? And it has subsided some You know, it's not as prevalent and malevolent as it was during those 2 years we had. I think it was just like an insane amount of activity. But I do believe, I mean, Austin is not New Orleans, but Austin is also a very
yes,
it's,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bad stuff here and a lot of bad people. And, you know, somebody asked me one day, they were like, why are there so many gangsters downtown in that area? And I was like, because look where it's located. Austin is in the middle between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. I mean, it's like a crossroads. So, I mean, obviously it's where you're going to set up your shop if you're going to do whatever. So that's why there's so much of it around here. But as long as you know where to stay out of and the areas to not go, you're okay. But downtown Austin has now become the most dangerous place in Texas, which is really ridiculous. It also has to do with the stupidity of we don't need police. So that really just has caused a lot of crime to just run amok. One thing I tell people though, if you're able to see some of these things, I don't do it all the time, but sometimes I can't help it. I'll just see it. And it's something that I've been doing since I was a kid. And when I used to coach, a lot of different fighters. A lot of them would have attachments to them. And I had a friend who was better at seeing them than me. And we were both students of the same sensei at one time. And he would always tell me, he goes, dude, that guy's got something on him. And sometimes I would catch a glimpse of it, you know, but not like him. He could see it full on. And I noticed that a lot of these people who are into violence or extreme violence, and this is not, I'm not attacking people, I'm not saying, oh, if you're in the UFC or you're a pro boxer, you got some kind of attachment. It was just an inordinately large number of fighters that had that on them, because I think that there is something that will come to you that feeds on that violence that you're able to create and you know, the carnage that you're able to dish out. And it's just there like a parasite that attaches itself to you, and it sucks that energy. And so a lot of the fighters that I've known over the years, you know, they're always struggling with something, like a demon in their lives, you know, and their fighting is their outlet. But it's also, I think, that the violence is a gateway for these entities to attach themselves. And there's a lot of that here in Austin, because the fight community has grown by leaps and bounds in the last few years, or 10 years, I guess. And so you get a lot of people that come here and they train from all over, and I'll meet them, and you can just feel like this heavy darkness on them. And I think Austin is a very favorable climate for the most part, and it's very pretty. So a lot of people flock here, just like they did Seattle and Portland and San Francisco and all those other places. And then those places just turn into not good places with really bad energy. When I was in Seattle a few years ago, or about 3 years ago, the energy was like already starting to get bad. Like you could feel it. It was coming. So what happened during the pandemic, it was just like, it became a really dark and heavy place, but you could feel it was already on the verge of like flipping to being just really bad. And so it didn't surprise me what went on there. And I had some friends that actually went through some of the stuff that went on there, and they were like, the media has not told you anything about what's really going on here. And they were seeing like shadowy looking creatures, like I say creatures, but like just shadowy looking things moving around the buildings downtown. And people were reporting seeing like things near the, I forgot the name of that area where people go, where the shops and stuff are or whatever. There was a friend of mine that used to go in there all the time, and he saw this weird looking shadow thing and just moving around like a human amongst the people, and then going down the stairs, walking around like a person, but it was like a 7 foot tall Grim Reaper looking shadow blending in with people, and people weren't even noticing it. And so I think it was weird that another friend of mine had reported seeing that same thing down on 6th Street in Austin. I mean, and that seems like something you would see on Bourbon Street. I mean, these places, they become infested with these parasitic entities. And I think you're right. When everything kind of shifted and the dark side gained an upper hand, which is, I really believe that's what happened. I agree with you. I think that it unleashed these things on us, and some of them maybe slowed down, but I don't think it's over. And I think that they definitely gave them a boost, you know, and when you're getting those reports, like you said, of all these weird looking creatures, just an uptick in just weirdness and possession, you know, people reporting being possessed and just seeing demons in their house and in their rooms and whatever, you know. But Dark, it was good having you on, man, and I appreciate you coming on and talking. And we got to do this again. We got to record together. I want to put a show together with you where we can go in depth about a lot of these subjects, you know, because you can pretty much talk about anything.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Let's do it, man. I'll be open to something next week. I got a whole bunch going on to fill out this week, but next week I'll be open to something. Let's do it.
Yeah. And our mutual friend Linda Godfrey, she's not doing too well, and I know you and her have been friends for years. So if you get the time, maybe reach out to her. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. But she's not doing well, and so it's a sad thing. But
I'll definitely reach out to Linda. She's a sweetheart, man. She really is.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was good talking to you, and thanks for coming on. And we're gonna do this. We're gonna record together.
All right, I'll catch up with you, bro.
Okay,
and to your audience, thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Okay, man, I appreciate your time.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. So, folks, that's Dark Waters, a person I've known for quite a while, and he has a lot of insight into a lot of stuff. I've spent a lot of time talking to him. We just kind of lost, you know, track or whatever. He was going through a lot of stuff, and so was I, and we just kind of went our separate ways, but we started talking again, and we're like, hey, dude, why don't we just start working? Let's do this. It's been a long time coming. I've been trying to get together with as many people as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of people who listen to the Friday podcast don't listen to the live stream, if you can believe that. I mean, we get way more people that listen outside of YouTube than YouTube, which is frustrating for me because I think I put a lot of work into this live stream, you know, and we get a lot of great guests and a lot of like really cool people that come on here. And then, you know, everybody's like, are you on Spotify? Are you on Spotify? And that's what they listen to us on one of the other 12 platforms. But yeah, folks, it's 10:30 and I'm going to have to run. But you know what? It's been good. God has blessed me with a large family of people and friends. And somebody had mentioned something earlier in the comments section. I want to talk about that. When I mentioned that Dark Waters was a black gentleman and that Bettina was a black female, and they said, well, what does that matter? What it matters is that there are not a lot of African Americans doing this. I mean, that are actually doing it as good as they do, and they're successful in doing, you know, what they do. And I guess, am I wrong for mentioning that? Is that a problem? I don't get why that is a problem because, you know, I just thought that should be pointed out. And there just isn't. There's not a lot of them doing it. And actually, there's not a lot of Mexican Americans doing it here either. I mean, really and truly, me and Armando, you know, we were kind of like the Hispanic versions of Expanded Perspective, you know, in a way. I really like those guys. I like the work that they did. Thank you for that donation, Grace, and thank you, Jamie, for that donation. You know, and I thought that diversity in this field, it does help because you get different perspectives, you know, and I'm not one of those people that thinks, oh, just because somebody's, you know, whatever, then we need to have that on there. But I do believe that coming from different perspectives, different cultures, and hearing what they have to say about these subjects can lead us to a better understanding of it. I had a talk with somebody that I met downtown the other day. He's a professor, and he's Hindu, and he's from Bangalore. And we began to talk, and he speaks all these different dialects from the Indian subcontinent. And he was a great guy to talk to. And you know, unfortunately, he had called my phone. I didn't put his name in my phone. His name is Saeed. If you're listening, just if you could reach out to me, because he is a professor and works downtown at the college, and he had a lot of insight into ancient civilizations and cultures involving the the Indian culture. And I think that talking to people like him, I went to go see this movie called The Ancestral. It's a really scary, creepy movie about sleep paralysis. It's a Vietnamese movie. My godson is Vietnamese. And we were the only people that weren't Vietnamese in the theater. And afterwards, I talked to like 6, 7, 8 different people who were Vietnamese, and they were there to watch this show that's about the paranormal. And so they talked to me and gave me some pretty cool stories. One guy gave me a story, which I am actually going to tell on the show. I'm going to write that down so I can remember. But I'm going to tell this on the show. And it's pretty creepy. He gave me a really creepy story, him and his girlfriend, because the way things are in their home country is not how it is here. And things are totally different. You know, people think that you're not going to learn anything by talking to somebody. If you can get past a language barrier and talk to people from different cultures who don't have the same exact thing, everything as you, that's how you learn. I think a lot of this tribalism and a lot of this, well, I'm going to stick with mine and I'm not going to talk to anybody outside of that. That's a big problem. That's a big problem because then you don't learn anything. And I do applaud Bettina Moss because, you know, this is no BS. I mean, she's been put through the ringer by people because not only is she a female, and there's not a whole lot of females that are doing this Dogman research thing, you know, but she's a black female, and still to this day, there are people who aren't going to be nice to people just because they're different. And I'm not talking about who you would expect, just people in general. You know what I mean? And so when somebody said, what does it matter? I think it matters a great deal. I think it matters when you look at Dark Waters and where he came from and how he grew up and who he is as a person. We talked, me and him about this. We didn't go real in depth, but I mean, he talked about his upbringing and how he came to be who he is and where he came from. And I could totally relate to that. Me being of mixed, of Hispanic and white, and growing up looking like, as we say, gabacho or abuelo, you better learn how to throw them chingazos because you're going to get tested. And I grew up under heavy racism from the Hispanic community that actually just looking at me as a white boy and wanting to beat me up. So you had to learn how to fight. And, I'd go to school and it was like, there's cliques, that you have to deal with. And when I moved to the inner city, I had to deal with gangs. I mean, it was a fact of life, They had them here. I mean, we had different gangs that kind of ran things. There was a Crip gang that was pretty, they messed with people. And, there was Latin Kings, and there was another one called Los Hermanos. There was a lot of them. And I had to learn to maneuver through all that, and first time I ever had a gun pointed at me, I was 16 years old. And a 17-year-old pointed it right at me. Years later, when I was doing security at a place, which subsequently was the place where I read Barton Umley's book, Inhumanoids, and when they had the fire department had taken it and was just using it for practice, whatever. But it was a housing project. This was years ago. I was like a young man. And there was a 17-year-old that killed a 16-year-old. And I thought to myself, that could have been me. That kid sat there scared, like sweating dynamite, pointing that pistol at me. I had only shot a pistol once in my life prior to that. And I looked in that revolver and I saw the bullets in that gun. And I thought, this kid's about to kill me. Didn't happen, by the grace of God. And he ended up getting put away or whatever. But we had a history, me and that guy. And he was a Crip. But yeah, so when you look at where you come from, it's your journey. It's where you are, who you are, and it takes you to where you're at now. And so different cultures, different people, different religions, different whatever. I mean, that is kind of where we are as a people, to learn and to understand. It's like we're being tested. Are we going to be able to survive this? Or are we going to use intertribalism and let it destroy us? That is the question. Are we going to be able to find common ground with one another? Here's the thing. No matter who you deal with, no matter who they are, you can find something. I tell my nephews this all the time, to find common ground with them. You can find something that is you have in common. Everybody you deal with. That's how you're able to communicate with people. That's how I'm able to get so many stories from people just out that I go out and I meet out and about. Not everybody that I get a story from comes from an email or a messenger or whatever. A lot of my stories come from people, just like I did this past week, just getting a ton of stories from these people who've seen these things and had these encounters. That's the key right there, just being able to communicate with these people and not making a big deal out of them being different than you, but accepting and embracing that difference and being able to move past any prejudices you have, whether it is gender bias, racial bias, religion, whatever, because some of my best friends are Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, different types of Christianity that don't always agree with me or agree with everything. Some of them believe in certain ways that I don't, and some of them believe in certain ways that I do. And on a daily basis, I've dealt with people from like 6 different religions and 20 different races in just 1-2 days. I can go to the mall, and there's Turkish people that I like. There's this cologne that they sell. I'll buy cologne from them. I go to the Kurdish guy and I'll get my Texas ornaments that he gets shipments of, and then I go to the Israeli people because they have this great skin product that I use, and then my Pakistani friend, him and the Vietnamese people that make my jewelry. The Iranian guy that likes to sell the stuffy purse or little backpack thingies or whatever. Got a couple of those. My wife likes them. They're really cool. And they're all these different people from all these different cultures. And I've talked to all of them and gotten stories from all of them because that's my job. That's what I do, and I embrace that difference. And I think that it is something special that Bettina is really the only black female that is doing this. And she's doing it well. And there are hurdles that you have to climb. Please, trust me, folks. Y'all have no idea. Okay, you have no idea what she's been through, what I've been through, what Dark Waters has been through, what all of us have been through. DW, went to war with the biggest name in this field, in the Dogman field, and he caught a lot of horribleness over that. He doesn't even talk about it. Like, it's just like, whatever, just water off a duck's back. When you're talking with him in the conversation, he doesn't even want to talk about it. He doesn't bring it up. He doesn't go, oh yeah, that guy, blah, blah, blah. Most people would just be, you know what? I'm done. I give up. I'm out, dude. But these people, they keep on pushing and they keep on working. And, I'm going to tell you something right now. I am not a liberal. If that's what you're thinking, I'm not. I'm a realist. I'm a very pragmatic person, believe it or not. The first, when I hear a weird noise, I don't go, oh, was that a spooky ghost? Was there a spooky ghost? Is there a spooky ghost here? What's going on, spooky ghost? That's not the first thing that comes to my mind. And some people may think that. They may think, oh, this guy, he's into this weird, esoteric, whatever. Everything's a ghost. Everything's a Bigfoot. Everything's this alien abduction, whatever. That's not the case. Occam's razor. I mean, it's usually the simplest answer is like, oh, the AC turned on, the door moved. The other day, bless your heart, Nelly, I love you, but the little curtain kept moving, and she goes, what is that? What's going on, And I'm like, it's the breathing thing from my mask. I had rolled over, and I turned, and she just saw the thing moving because it didn't move like that. And she goes, oh, thank goodness. Because we have had weird things happen to us in our house. We've heard snapping noises. Me and Anthony were in the studio, and we heard like this crunching, popping, crackling noise. It was like in the air. I mean, it's just... Me and Nellie have heard disembodied voices in our room. It wasn't anything demonic or weird, and it didn't even really scare us. It was like we picked up a bit of a radio wave or something, and somebody was like real quick, and then it was gone. It searched the whole house. That, I mean, you when you go and you look at all these different situations, that we come across, and everybody just jumps to a conclusion of like, oh, that's a demon, there's a demon, there's a jinn, there's a this, there's a that, then it starts to look crazy. You start to look like a nut. You're just like, oh, everything you see is just a ghost. You know what I mean? And that's not the case. But it does happen. Just like I tell people, you know, and when they ask me, will Dogman attack me? Will a shark? I'm not saying it's an animal, but they have animalistic instincts. And if they are what I think they are, you could definitely be in danger. Yeah, I believe that. Will a shark attack you? Will a shark attack you? Not necessarily, but it could. Will you run across a shark in the ocean? Not necessarily, but you could. If you go to an area that's a hot spot for Bigfoot, will you run across one? Not necessarily, but you could. Same thing with a Dogman. I mean, you know, it could happen. I'm not telling you that that's what the deal is, you know, that you know, don't go home and go, oh, Josh Turner said that, you know, there's a good chance of them, because people just don't listen. And they think that I'm, you know, automatically. But yeah, that's not the first thing I jump to. That's not the first conclusion I jump to. And so anyway, I think that DW does good work. I think that Bettina does good work. And I think they should be applauded for that, because it is a lot harder and different for certain people to do certain things, you know. I think that when DW had his situation with the other large host of that show, okay, hold on one second. Hey, Anthony, I hate to be interrupted, folks, but I got a job to do. I got to unfortunately do my job. Read that right there in the middle of the show. But anyway, I'm not going to prattle on. I just, you know, I wanted to point that out, you know, that somebody said, what does this have to do with anything? I would encourage people to learn as many languages as possible. It helps with your research. It helps you to be, if this is a subject that you're interested in, about researching, and like there's a lot of people ask me, they say they want to write books, they want to be a podcaster, they want to be a researcher, they want to be this or that. Then I think that what you need to do is learn more about other cultures and learn. You don't have to immerse yourself in it, okay? You can still be you, and you don't have to go around and act like you're a part of that culture, because you're really not, but you can learn about it and try to get their take on it. And I think that that's an important thing that a lot of people just do not grasp, and they think that you're trying to be or whatever, and you know, you're not. John Doe, I appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, Nirad says you can see a shark from a safe place like a boat or the shore. Yeah, you can. Just don't get in the water with it. You know, that's the thing. And sometimes you don't know if the water's there. I mean, when you walk out at night, you know, you're taking a risk. You're getting in your car, you're getting on the interstate, anything could happen. I mean, anything could happen. You're gambling. But you don't even realize that you're gambling when you just walk outside your house and go to an area where these creatures could be, where they come in and out of our reality, or they manifest themselves or whatever. Wow. Sorry for mentioning your identity politics. Please proceed, Comrade Turner. Okay, David. So what are you saying? I am a communist? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm far from that. Definitely not that. I'm not moving that way. But that's cute. Does somebody want to remove his comment, or are we just going to leave it there? People unfamiliar with how a grown man would handle the way he did Vic were uncomfortable. He has no apologies to offer, and I like that DW kept it real with no filter. It was personal. It's true. He actually gave me some advice, you know, recently about just praying for that guy and not even caring, you know. So, folks, I'm gonna have to hit it here. I got things I got to take care of. Remember, Eventbrite. Pick up your tickets at Eventbrite, and yeah, they're $30, and you get a lot of bang for your buck, dude. And I hope that you guys can make it to the concert. We definitely would like to see you there. Everybody, have a good week.